Good morning and welcome to Trim for the final election debate in this election 2024 campaign. We're on air for an extra hour this morning. We're with you until midday. If you would like to participate in this debate, by all means, you can send us your questions to election@lmfm.ie. As with the previous two debates, we will be invited by a panel of outgoing and first-time politicians. They are here, as is our invited guests, who will be putting questions directly to our panel. The rules of engagement, ladies and gentlemen, as always, you will be allowed a minute and a half to set out your stall in relation to why people should vote for you. We will then be putting questions directly to you and allowing you in the region of between a minute and a half and 2 minutes to respond directly to those particular questions. Towards the end of the debate, we will also afford you the opportunity for a closing statement in the region of about 60 seconds. So with that, we'll get underway and introduce our panel. First, Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin. Seamus McMenamin, the Green Party. Finbar Lynch, People Before Profit Solidarity. Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil. Peadar Tóibín, Aontú. Linda Nelson, Murray, Fine Gael. Ronan Moore, the Social Democrats, and Noel French, non-party. You're very welcome and thank you for joining us this morning. We will start with Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin. Johnny, you've a minute and a half to set out your stall.
The choice you have in this election is clear. A change of government with new ideas, clear plans and a fresh approach. Making housing affordable, €10 a day childcare, abolishing USC for average workers, access to a GP or a dentist when you need one, abolishing carers' means test and tackling government waste. Or more of the same from the same parties who have been in government for 100 years. A Sinn Féin government will deliver the Navan rail line, protect and enhance services at Navan Hospital, increase Garda numbers in Meath, access to a GP or a dentist when you need one, and we need to tackle the cause of the lowest funding from central government in the country Meath County Council have. It is time to give Sinn Féin a chance. We have the team, we have the plans and we have the determination. The only way to get a change of government is to vote for Sinn Féin. In Meath West on Friday, vote Johnny Girk, number 1.
Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin, thank you for that. To Noel French next, non-party. Noel.
Thanks. I'm a worker. I work for people. I will listen to people. I want to make a difference. I want to make life better for the people of Meath and for the people of Ireland. Please give me your number 1 this Friday. I will work for you.
Noel French, non-party. Thank you for that. Seamus McMenamin, the Green Party.
As a GP, lives and works in Navan, one of the many things we do, but the main thing we do is we diagnose and we solve problems. And one of the main questions I'm asked as I'm going around the county is not why I'm standing for the Green Party, but why I'm standing in the election at all. And the reason is because I've diagnosed the problem, which is that if we don't act now to manage the climate crisis, we're going to have to do a lot more work later on, and it's going to cost us a lot more. And the people who will be affected first are the vulnerable, the children, the elderly. And one of the things that I want to do in this election is solve the problem early so that we don't have to, it won't have as bad an effect on people as it will otherwise. So the reason why I'm standing is because I think there are changes that need to be done. The reason why the Green Party have been called the most successful small party in government in the history of the state is because we don't have any baggage. We're not interested in politics. We want to get the solutions across the line. And because we've no real baggage, we can work with other parties to get that done. So the reason that we got a lot of our programme for government over the line is because our ideas are good and people recognise that. We didn't get them because we bullied Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael. We got them because the solutions were good for people, and that's why you should vote for me in the general election.
Seamus McMenamin, Green Party, thank you for that. Ronan Moore of the Social Democrats.
Hi Alan and hi to your listeners. My name is Ronan Moore. This Friday I'm asking you, the people, to vote Ronan Moore and the Social Democrats, number 1. For almost all my professional life, I've worked in the service of others. I currently work with young adults as a post-primary school teacher in St. Pat's and Navan. And before this, I worked for aid agency Troker overseas in West Africa. and for the last 6 years I've been a local councillor in the Trim District. Now I'm asking for your trust to represent the people of Meath West and Dáil Éireann. The Social Democrats believe in the social contract, where you work hard, you contribute to your community, and in return the state should provide you with free healthcare, affordable childcare, disability services if and when you need it, an affordable home to buy or rent. Yet in these and in other areas we feel the government have failed to deliver. As a party, the Social Democrats, we want to invest in our services. We want to reduce the cost of living and keep money in people's pockets instead of the boom and bust economics of the older parties. With your help and your vote in government, the Social Democrats would demand a senior minister for disability at the cabinet table whose sole focus is championing those with disabilities, enact structural change in how we truly deliver affordable homes in this country, fully realise Sláinte Care, the NHS-style system of healthcare, where healthcare is based on the need, not ability to pay, and deliver a public model of childcare as opposed to the dysfunctional model that we have now, which is like a second mortgage to parents, where staff are not paid enough. And that is why I will be asking for you to trust me, Ronan Moore and the Social Democrats, with your vote this Friday. Thank you.
Ronan Moore, the Social Democrats, thank you for that. Finbar Lynch, People Before Profit, Solidarity.
The MO of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in power has been to strip down and sell off public services to the highest bidder. We've borne the brunt of these policies for decades and has led to the current crises in housing and healthcare, in transport and the climate and biodiversity crises. In each of these areas, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael consistently prioritise the demands of big business over the needs of ordinary people. While 41% of parents are skipping meals or reducing portion sizes to feed their kids, the big food companies make massive profits. While people are terrified to heat their homes in the winter in case they get a bill they can't afford, the big energy companies make massive profits. While the homelessness numbers grow higher and higher, corporate landlords, vulture funds and developers make a killing. People Before Profit is presenting an ambitious plan but a necessary one for a 32-county eco-socialist Ireland. A society that looks after ordinary people and the environment, that makes essential public services free at the point of use, that will provide housing through a state construction company paid for by the Apple tax, that will provide healthcare, transport and education while pushing the burden of paying for these things back onto the super wealthy in Irish society. The other side of this election, People Before Profit, wants to see a left government without Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael that will radically transform society and who will block the US from transporting weaponry through Shannon and Irish airspace to carry out the genocide in Palestine. It will sanction Israel and support a free Palestine from the river to the sea, and so far we're the only party to rule out coalition of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Another Ireland is possible. On the 29th of November, vote People Before Profit number 1 and transfer left to end 100 years of Fianna Fáil Fine Gael rule.
Finbar Lynch, People Before Profit, Solidarity. Next, Linda Nelson-Murray, Fine Gael.
Good morning. I'm Councillor Linda Nelson-Murray and I'm your Fine Gael candidate for Meath West. I'm 49, a mother of 2 with a lifetime of experience to bring to this role. I came into politics by campaigning to save businesses and jobs that were adversely affected with insurance issues, and I spent many a morning here on LMFM bringing your listeners up to speed on what we needed to do. And you know what? We made great changes, including in legislation. For the past 5 years, I've been working in politics and the constituency. I know how to do this job. I just need to be elected to do it. I want to help people in the here and now. The cost of living is to all of us very real. I hear it at the doorsteps. That's why I want to see childcare costs reduced, your monthly medications reduced, hot school lunches out to every student, much more for carers, more for our pensioners, including increases in the pension and fuel allowance, VAT rate reduced for businesses from 13.5% to 11%, support businesses way more, the backbone of our economy, more support for farmers and cut out the red tape. Meath is a commuter county, but at times it can feel more like a car park. We need the train line now, which is at last underway to speed up. We need more buses, especially in rural areas. We need every person to be able to access a GP, a dentist and all healthcare. We need to feel safer on our streets with more Gardaí and also support our Gardaí. Meath needs more investment. Our population has increased by 13% since 2016 and I'm determined to get that investment. We can find the funds we've been minding the coffers. I'm ready for this role. My experience, my family, my business, my campaigning and politics has ensured that I am going to be a great TD for Meath West.
Okay.
Give me your number 1 vote on Friday, please.
Linda Nelson-Murray of Fine Gael, thank you for that. Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil.
To your listeners as well, it's great to be here as the Fianna Fáil general election candidate here in Meath West, and I'm honoured to have that chance to be a voice for the people of Meath West in the next Dáil. Even better if I can be a voice at government for this area, which I think is really important. I'm all for progress and not for protest, and I've met thousands of people since I've become a councillor in 2019 who agree that we have made much progress, but there is much more to be done in areas such as housing, our disability resources and services, in our infrastructure, and indeed in reducing the cost of living for the people in this area. I'm a mother of 2 children. Liam is 8 and Hannah is 3. I work in the house building sector and I've been a councillor, as I said, since 2019. So I know many of the challenges that are faced by people every day. And I want to see our communities improve and to benefit from the strong budget position that this government has created. And if elected, that is my main goal. We need to build a minimum of 2,000 houses in this area for families and for couples that need to own their own homes through supports like the Help to Buy. We need to create more opportunities for them to purchase affordable houses. We've increased 50% investment in our disability services, but working with an autism group here in Trim, I understand that we need more. I would really be truly honoured if you would give me your #1 vote this coming Friday.
Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil. And finally, Peadar Tóibín, Aontú.
Meath is a great county, but we have been cursed with terrible governments. And every single indicator for investment in this county, Meath, is coming at the bottom. 14 years ago, Fianna Fáil and the Greens tried to close Navan A&E. Myself and a number of others came together. We founded the hospital campaign. We brought tens of thousands of people onto the streets. And on every single occasion that the government have tried to close Navan A&E, we have fought back. There were 10 hospitals for closure with regards to our A&E 10 years ago. There are 2 remaining open. And the fact that we have our A&E open is a testament to people power in this constituency. Meath has the highest number of commuters in the country, and yet Navan is the biggest town in the country without a rail line. We've been promised by successive governments that we would have this rail line built. I'm the chair of the Meath on Track campaign. We have protested, we've held public meetings, we've held petitions, and finally now this project is now on the National Development Plan. But the government are still talking about 2036 for it to be built. It's far too far away. Meath has the lowest number of Gardaí in the country. It's incredible. We have the Minister for Justice in this county, and yet we have the lowest number of Gardaí, and we can see the effects of that on the streets of the county. I'm the chair of the Safer Meath campaign, and we're pushing hard to see can we get the number of Gardaí that we need. On a national basis, I've done my best to hold this government to account. Fine Gael and this government and Fianna Fáil have shredded taxpayers' money on projects such as the National Children's Hospital, the bike sheds, and modular homes. We're looking to inject accountability into the system to make sure that taxpayers' money is saved and put into proper projects.
Okay, Peadar Tóibín, Aontú, thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our panel this morning, who will be with us until midday. We'll take a short break there. Welcome back to Trim this morning for our third and final election debate in election 2024. We're with you until midday this morning. Our first question this morning comes from Ger Cullen of Tag Meath Autism Group, and Ger joins us. Ger, good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. Before we get into the question, just tell me a little bit about your experiences and the difficulties that you have faced.
Well, I have 3 autistic children, and we struggle with services for our children. We've 2 children that are 18 plus now, and when they turned 18, they have received no services. My 17-year-old, he receives very little services. Waiting times are just so long. They're so long for a lot of families, and really it's in a crisis, the services.
Now, what level of service do they require, and is it a case that when they reach 18, that's it, you're on your own?
Yeah. Speech and language, occupational therapy, psychology. They got very little over the years, very, very little, like most families. And then when they turned 18, we received a letter in the post and they're discharged from services and you're left on your own.
And your question now to our panel this morning.
Hello, everybody. I'm a mum to 3 autistic children. I set up Tag Meath Autism Group 5 years ago with my husband, as there was no support for my children or ourselves. I am speaking on behalf of the children that have no voice and on behalf of the parents that are not being heard. There is a huge issue within the Children's Disability Service and the lack of proper school places for autistic children. Waiting lists for assessments are far too long and therapy service nearly non-existent. Families are at crisis point, begging for help, and are told time and time again that waiting lists are long, or they have no OT, speech and language therapist, or psychologist because they are trying to fill the position. Also, when an autistic person turns 18, they are very quickly discharged from disability service and sent on their merry way. When my daughter turned 18 and was discharged from services, she asked me, do they think that at 18, my autism is cured? There is very little services for children, but there is nothing when they turn 18 and at a time in their life when they are probably need more support than ever trying to navigate adulthood. My question today is, what is going to change that will benefit autistic people and their families? And will they always be put at the bottom of the pile and made to feel like a very expensive bike shed and security hut are more of a priority than proper school places and services for some of the most vulnerable people in society?
That was Ger Cullen, and we will put that now to our panel, but it is nonetheless a conversation that we could be having in any constituency in this country in the run-up to the election, and a damning indictment of everybody in politics that we are still at the point where we are, where we don't have sufficient services for those most in need and those who are most vulnerable. Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin, to you first.
Yeah, actually, I was speaking to a woman yesterday who had applied. Her child has autism, and she applied to 12 schools already this year and was refused a place for her child in 12 schools, and she's on her 13th school at the moment. I called that school yesterday to see if the principal would do what she could to get that child into that school. Now, that's probably above my remit, but I done that because this woman was at her wit's end. It is unbelievable, like, that she has to do that and fight for everything for her child. And she was so stressed out about it. You know, we were promised a couple of years ago that every school in the country would have a USD, autism class. That hasn't happened. There's not enough places. We need to make sure that there's a place for every child. We need to make sure about early interventions where children are now waiting 4 years to be assessed before they can even access services. It's a total and utter disgrace, and I most certainly would do my best, because whatever about people being short a few pound here and there, we have to look after people with disabilities, we have to look after people with mental health, and we have to look after people who are most vulnerable. So I would most certainly fight the corner for people and children struggling with autism, and that's only my experience from yesterday.
Okay, John O'Gurk, Sinn Féin, do you now know French non-party?
I hear these stories just quite too often. I have an autistic grandson, and we had to go private for assessment in order to get his services. Early assessment is just essential. If we're to intervene early with kids, it will give us the best results. And yes, over 18s, the services just seem to abandon people. It's really a matter of decency. We really should be looking after our children. Another challenge that I found, I was a foster parent, and the staff kept changing in the social services, and that's the difficulty as well. We need permanent staffing in social services, so that when you go into them, you're meeting the same people each time, because the staff keeps turning over, and we need to recruit more staff, and we really need to keep them. It's enough of a challenge to be a parent, besides being a parent with children that have additional needs. So early intervention, early assessment, and that's how we get the best results for the child, for the family, for the country.
No French non-party, thank you for that. Seamus McMenamin, Green Party.
Yeah, so I think it's a very important question, and thank you for bringing it up today. I think you're right. Someone with autism, it doesn't just start at primary school, it doesn't just end when they're 18. So one of the things the Green Party is looking at is promoting the access and inclusion model in childcare and preschool. And we feel that the National Council for Special Education, if it's beefed up and works directly with schools to support the ASD streams within schools, would be one of the ways that we could allow children with autism to access schools without, the 12 schools feeling that they couldn't take that child on because they weren't resourced properly, they didn't have the right training for the teachers. And also then, as you go through into secondary and into adult life, we need a model that's going to follow people all the way through. And, it's only recently that barrier used to stop at 6, because the HSE and Enable Ireland, which run the CDNT team locally, it's only within the last 2 years that they now cover all children up to 18. It used to be that the services stopped at 6, and I've had many patients who've had that experience and had to restart it when the waiting list finished. So I think having these artificial boundaries of age probably should be phased out, and we should be looking at a model that follows the children and young adults then throughout and supports them. So I suppose there are groups there which in theory can do this and support people in schools, but they're not funded and they're not big enough to do the job at the moment, and we would change that.
Seamus McMenamin, Green Party, thank you for that. Before we go to a break, we want to go to the Social Democrats and Ronan Moore.
Thanks, Chair, from correct, and thank you to your husband as well for setting up and doing the work that you've done. I think at the heart of this debate, though, it's the case that it's not whether any of us care more for disabilities. I think we all do, but it's about the policies of the parties and whether they have done enough to basically to serve the needs of people with disabilities. I feel that the government haven't been effective, and they have been in government for 15 years and 10 years in some cases. 9,000 children are waiting over 12 months for initial contact with Children's Disability Network team, and 15,000 on a waiting list. And the government haven't passed the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I could go on, the list is endless. But it's important that we need specific points to actually address this. For Social Democrats, there are two things. One, we need to address the recruitment and retention crisis in the healthcare and disability sector. We would establish a national workforce planning task force to address the short, medium and long-term needs of our health and social care sector. And secondly, and very importantly, Social Democrats are arguing for a senior minister for disability at the cabinet table. I think we're the only party to do so. We think that's a game changer. We don't think any future party would downgrade a senior minister for disability at the cabinet table. I think they would be outraged if they did. They should be outraged there isn't one there in the first place. Unless you're at that cabinet table, at those purse strings, championing your sole focus, championing those with disabilities, we feel it's an uphill battle. And the type of things that we would be looking for that Senior Minister for Disabilities is investment inclusion guided by the findings of the Disability Capacity Review, make multi-annual funding from government the norm in the disability sector, implement a weekly cost of disability payment to reflect that disabled people have a higher cost of living as a result of disability. And I could have gone on for another 50 minutes, but thank
Ronan,
you.
thank you for that. That's Ronan Moore of the Social Democrats. We have other panel members to get to on this particular topic, but we'll take a short break first. Back and straight to our panel we go. Finbar Lynch, in relation to that question around supports for children and adults with autism.
I just want to thank Ger for a question, first of all, and I completely agree that there is a crisis of care in this country. We have billions of euro of unpaid and underpaid labour. We have a fairly stressful and traumatic process of means testing for people with disabilities. We have Section 39 workers who are not being paid at the same level as their equivalent in the public sector. And we've the cost of having a disability is 10 to 14,000 euro a year. We've over 10,000 children on waiting lists for an assessment of need, and over 100,000 are waiting essential therapies. This is, very stressful for parents and for children. It has a significant impact on their quality of education and life. We think that government policy does not reflect the claims by Simon Harris that he does care about disability after his confrontation with Charlotte recently. Aside from that, I would say that there's 20,000 pupils with disabilities who were bussed out of their locality in the last year for special classes in schools, and we think that children and parents have a right to access these services in their own community. We think that there needs to be more coordination between health, education and disability services, and beyond that we think we need to clear waiting lists, especially by addressing the recruitment and retention crisis. By putting in more college places and by abolishing third-level fees to make these sorts of positions more secure and better paid and more attractive. And we think that every school in the state should have an autism class, as well as free and accessible school transport.
Okay. Yeah. Finbar Lynch, People Before Profit, Solidarity. Thank you for that. Linda Nelson Murray of Fine Gael.
First of all, Well done for championing for your children and for children with autism. And well done for setting up Tag Autism in Navan. I know how hard you work. Fair play to you. There's no point in denying it that this has to be the most serious and important issue for the next government. I mean, you know, there's no point in even trying to defend it. We need to do way more when it comes to autistic children and when it comes to disabilities, 100%. Even in our own case, we've worked with Neurodiversity Navan and we've brought all our employees through that training. Such is the importance of everybody in the workforce, even understanding when someone comes through your door with autism and how important it is that you know how to work with them. There is 3.2 billion put aside in the disability services budget, and that needs to be spent properly. I know from a business point of view, I was very forceful in setting up something called a one-stop shop where businesses knew how to access supports. And I'd like to see the exact same thing done for autism so that people actually know where to go. And I think a lot of the problems are that people feel totally lost when they have a child with any type of disability, no matter what it is, and where they should go. So I'd like to see a one-stop shop. Obviously, we need to recruit more therapists. We need a lot more people employed into everything to do with disabilities. And we need to enhance our respite services. I was absolutely delighted to see that over in Trimbletown there, we've opened a brand new respite service for children. Oh my God, so badly needed in County Meath, and we're going to have an adult services one as well. But we very much need to promote local support, you know, that people can appreciate and understand the needs of people. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil.
Thank you, Ger, for your question, and indeed thank you for the work that you do in your community. I know it's very difficult at your darkest time and your most vulnerable time that you were so committed to your children and to other people's families within your community that you went down this path of setting up Tag. I work with Trim Autism Friendly Town committee here in Trim, and our job is to create awareness around the town and to make autistic people feel that they are welcome and they are part of our community. So I hear a lot about you on a daily basis from Melissa and the rest of the team there, and I know they really look up to you, your inspiration to them. Look, we have a record level of investment, 3.2 billion set aside in the budget for disabilities. It's not going to be enough. It has not been enough to date, and things have moved too slowly, and I think we can all admit that, and it's one of my key priorities if elected, that we need to drive this through. We have fantastic people like Anne Rabbit, who, as Linda said, opened the respite house, and if you saw the people that were there that evening and how much it meant to them, you would provide a much bigger budget. We need to work with what we have now, and that does involve, the assessment of needs waiting lists. We need to get that down. We've started that work by using private providers. Staff is a huge issue. We know that. We need pay parity with our Section 39 workers. We need sign-on and retention bonuses for them.
Okay.
We cannot let our children down.
Aisling Dempsey of Fianna Fáil. Finally, Pat Tobin, Aintú.
Thanks, Ger, for all the work that you've done. I've had the pleasure of sitting with you before in terms of the work that you do. I think the big challenge in this election is for people to be able to cut through all the words that come at them in terms of this. And I do think that if you want to know what the next 5 years is going to hold, just look at the last 5 years of action or inaction in terms of the government. You know, when Simon Harris walked away from Charlotte in Kanturk, that was symbolic, really, of a government walking away from people with disabilities over the last 5 years. You know, we in Aintú put forward 2 motions to seek for a complete deletion of the means test in terms of the carers allowance. On both occasions, the government refused to implement that. The reality is that there are tens of thousands of children currently who are either waiting for assessments of needs or for a meeting with their CDNT. And that is as a result of this resources not being there. Why is there a problem with recruitment and retention? Simply because pay, terms and condition, and the chance of owning a home. So many young people who are actually qualified in these areas are voting with their feet and they're leaving with the country. If we really mean business, we need to make sure that there's proper workplace planning so that the necessary professions are coming through the universities and coming out the other side. But if we don't pay them properly, they simply won't be there to provide the necessary services for people who need them. We also believe that there should be a constitutional right to the correct educational placement for all children with disability, because many children are now being educated at home or even if they're in school, they're in the wrong placements, which is severely
Thank you for that.
inhibiting their ability to reach their potential.
Of Aon, thank you. I don't think there's any one member of the panel who would disagree with the notion that this is an absolute crisis. I think what most people who are listening to this, who find themselves in a position that they need to access supports, cannot understand why we cannot mobilize to deal with this crisis. If you consider the all-of-government approach and opposition approach that was adopted during the COVID crisis and what was achieved, okay, we can look back and reflect and say perhaps we didn't get it right, but we mobilized in order to deal with the crisis. Nobody gets the sense that that's happening now in relation to this, which is a crucial matter for, again, as I say, the most marginalised and vulnerable group in society. Is there anything there, Ger Cullen, that you had heard from our panel that brings a sense of optimism to you?
Well, I would just hope that school places can be a priority and sorted quickly. Every child deserves a school place, every child, and to have children without school places, you know, in 2024, it's a disgrace. It shouldn't be happening. Everyone deserves an education. And also, like, we really need services, therapy services. We need them back to one-to-one. Parents are being sent on courses, repeated courses all the time, and the children are not being seen one-to-one at services. That's just not happening anymore. Every child has different needs. It's not a one-fits-all at these courses. They need to actually see the children and work with the children.
And thank you for that, Chair. And when you consider the likes of Ger, who sets up a local group to try and deal with the requirements that she has and others like her have, and the lack of all of government approach towards this, that we have a proliferation of different groupings around the country that need to be brought together in order to ensure that the problem can be solved. Do you want to get in, Peadar?
Yeah, so it's quite extraordinary that actually DER's organisation actually gets referrals from the state organisation for parents who are seeking help. So the state organisation is offloading its responsibilities to a voluntary organisation in Navan at the moment. And this is the key thing. I see it all the time. The easiest way for a politician to say no is to actually say yes. I see politicians going to the gates of Leinster House, putting their arms around campaign groups, getting into photographs with them, and then go back into the Dáil, but voting against their interests in the
Peadar, I'm going
Dáil.
to stop you
This
because
is the key issue.
I want to get in very briefly, Ronan and Johnny, and then we move on. Ronan.
I think you make a good point in terms of having this cross-party approach in some respects, and there is a cross-party approach that does exist in our care system, and that is Sláinte Care. First time in Irish history we had cross-party support. My own co-founder, Roisin Shortall, would have been the architect. But the challenge there is it's a 10-year strategy. We're year 7, and we've fallen behind about year 3 in the targets that we are meant to meet. And if we were to hit those, that would help in terms of the staffing.
Okay, Ronan Moore, Social Democrats. Finally and briefly, Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin.
Chair, I think we need a new child and youth mental health service to replace CAMS and increase the upper age limit from 18 to 25 for access to those services. I think that's crucial as well.
Okay, Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin. Let's take a break there. Welcome back to Trim County Meath. Let's press on with our next invited guest. We'll put a question to our panel this morning. Sharon Lynch is a local volunteer with the Mental Health Services. Sharon, good morning. First of all, tell me of your experience in the past 5 years you have been volunteering. Have things got any better? How much strain are the services under?
They're under a lot of pressure. I've seen people being torn away in so many times. The help is not there. The help has been asked for so many times by so many people. It's not coming across. People are really suffering and they need the help. I would like to ask each candidate how they will ensure that no more people suffering with their mental health and needing emergency support will be turned away from psychiatric services.
This is a problem, and to you, Noel French, I will go first to answer that question from Sharon.
Absolutely, it's absolutely horrible. The amount of people that have contacted me where their relative is in danger of suicide and they end up being sent to A&E or taken there by the Gardaí and staying overnight, as a lot of these things happen late at night when people are at their lowest, and then next morning being discharged and sent back to their local GP. I had a recent case where a young man was having huge difficulties, and we tried to engage with the mental services, and it was a 6-month waiting list. 6 months for emergencies. It's just awful. I have been active with local groups, Grow and Aware. I was
Okay, Noel, I'm sorry, but your time is up on that. Noel French, non-party. Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin.
Yeah, a few weeks ago we met with the SOSAD group in Dublin, a group of Sinn Féin TDs, and we arranged a meeting with Minister Butler. Their funding is going to run out by Christmas if they don't get supports. Minister Butler met them on a Zoom call along with her staff. She promised them, she promised and made commitments to them that as of now have not been honoured. And this service has, in 2024, it had 395 clients in Navan. It had 4,208 client sessions offered in Navan in 24. And this service will run out of money by Christmas if Minister Butler doesn't honour the commitments she made to those people. And that, to me, is a disgrace.
Okay, Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin, just on that particular point, that your own party leader, Mary Lou MacDonald, wrote to the Minister for Health on foot of the inaction from the Minister, and they're still awaiting a response in relation to the funding for SOSAD. And that is not just a local organisation, it is national. And the job they do, and they have the metrics to prove it in terms of the impact that they have in relation to those who are seeking their help and support. But Johnny Girk of Sinn Féin. Ronald Moore, Social Democrats.
Thanks, Sharon. Look, you know the problems, you deserve solutions. So for ourselves, Social Democrats, the full implementation of Sláintecare. I mentioned earlier the first ever cross-party healthcare strategy is a core part of our solution, and it's a red line for ourselves going to any government. A core part of the Sláintecare is about our approach to addressing mental health. So in Sláintecare, we talk about the prioritisation of preventative measures, early intervention and community-based care, and to ensure adequate resource allocation, and increasing the annual budget to mental health services to 10% of overall health budget. It's currently at 5%. Another thing that we need to do is we need to address the challenges of workers who are Section 39 workers. Social care for people at home is being progressively outsourced, and majority of youth mental health services, for instance, are done by not-for-profit organisations. Many of these struggle to recruit staff and then to retain them. I've been chair of the Trim Family Resource Centre for 3 or 4 years. I've been on the board for over 7 years now, and we find that each and every day. So we need, while there has been some progress, that needs to be addressed. Okay. It needs to be properly resourced.
Ronald, thank you for that. I want to go to Seamus McMenamin, Green Party.
So yeah, I mean, obviously, like the previous question, I think everyone on the panel is going to agree that, you know, something should be done and we must do something. And I like Ronan, I think the key here should be what are the solutions to this, because for years the funding has been often unspent. So we have funding provided centrally that is often returned because the structures aren't there to actually implement these strategies. And when you look at the likes of CAMS or the likes of the adult psychiatry departments. I don't believe anyone goes in to work in that sector because they want to bring in, rules and regulations. They want to turn people away. It's a reflection of the fact that they don't have enough funding. And sometimes they don't even have all the members of the multidisciplinary team. They mightn't have a psychologist in place. So really, one of the things that we need to look at is actually we have structures which are supposed to help people, but they're not able to. And again, I don't think it's the fault of the people working there, but you actually need to have, I think, a dedicated task force to actually make the changes that are needed and act on the various reports that we have.
Seamus McManaman, Green Party. Let's go then to Linda Nelson-Murray of Fine Gael.
Sharon, thanks very much, and thanks for asking your question. I think we need an urgent review of everything to do with the mental health services, 100%, from youth up to adults. As a mum, I can just see the pressure. My kids are just turning 9 and 10, and the pressure already with all that is social media, the pressure that's on them, and everybody recognises that. We need to ensure that there is a dedicated national lead for mental health, without a shadow of a doubt. We need to create a central referral system, for CAMS, so that everybody is together and everybody knows what's going on in terms of all the service providers. Provide targeted care programmes, recruit way more mental care professionals, way more. I'm very passionate about this one. Develop a youth mental health app so that, people, whether they're sitting at home at night time, if they can't access something, during the day, if they're sitting at home at night time, that they have something they can go on their phones. They're used to using phones, they're used to using technology and get advice there. And we just need to expand capacity. We just need to look after these people. So that's what I'd like to see.
Nelson-Murray, Fine Gael, thank you for that. I'm going to come to you in 2 seconds, Finbar, but it's a yes-no question I just want to ask our panel. On foot of what is happening in Australia at the moment in relation to the banning of social media platforms for under 16s. No, would you agree with something like that happening in this country? Ronan? Yes. Linda?
200%.
Heather?
We've already brought in legislation to
that's
ban
a
it
yes.
in primary schools.
Aisling?
Yes.
Finbar?
Party hasn't discussed it yet. I'm not going to take a position.
Seamus?
Yes.
And Johnny? Okay. Finbar, to you next.
The mental health. So Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have chronically underfunded public services in mental health as they have elsewhere. We have a higher level of mental health disorders than average, but a lower funding to it than average. We want to double funding to up to €500 million to bring it up to 12% of total health funding, which is what's recommended by the WHO. We also believe people should be treated on the basis of need, and that we need an all-Ireland health service, another national health service free at the point of use. But I think whenever we talk about mental health, I think we also need to stress that housing is a fundamental human right. Having a secure roof over your head is as basic and fundamental need for your mental and physical health as is food and water. And the longer that this goes on, the longer we have 15,000 people homeless and 4,500 children homeless, it's going to exacerbate the mental health crisis.
Okay, that's Finbar Lynch, People Before Profit, Solidarity. Padre Tobin, aim to.
Yeah, we have to cut through the blizzard of words on this. So Fine Gael and government closed the 24-hour psychiatric unit in Navan and moved it to Drogheda, making access to psychiatric supports in this county harder to achieve. Right now, there's been an 81% increase in the number of children waiting on CAMS waiting lists since 2020. Well over 3,800 children are currently waiting in that space at the moment. It's a common theme right through the public service delivery. Retention and recruitment. The only way you can recruit people and retain them is to pay them a proper wage, and the government is refusing to do that, and as a result many are leaving or going into the private sector in relation to this. I do absolutely think that social media has had a big impact in relation to this, and we're only catching up now in this country. We have already brought through a bill which would look to ban the use of smartphones for children under the ages of 12. And there are 14,850 people who are currently in homelessness accommodation. How can a child develop socially and mentally in a situation where they don't have a proper home?
Okay,
and where
Padre Tobin, aim to. Thank you for that. Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil.
Hi, Sharon, and thanks for being here today and for your question. Look, I've said it in the last answer, pay parity, Section 39 workers, that's all in motion and needs to be done to ensure that this service or these services are adequately resourced. Sign-on bonuses, retention bonuses, everything needs to be improved in this sector. We need to cut our waiting lists, and again, through the private service, we are working on that. We need more investment and we need more focus. We need more people elected who are focused in this area, who are invested in it. And I think it's important to point out that the two people who've asked questions here today advocating for the most vulnerable in our society are women. And I do think that is what we need more of in the Dáil. We need women, we need the women's perspective and the family perspective.
Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil, thank you for that. Sharon, you had an opportunity to listen to our panel. Is it the same political nonsense you're getting from the same rhetoric, or do you believe that there are solutions there, but we just don't know how to make them work?
I do believe there is solutions, but I think that we're gone beyond solutions. We need action right now for people with their mental health, for people not to be turned away and all the stigma that's out there that's held against it. We haven't got much time with a lot of people. We need action now.
It's important to point out as well, Sharon, you were in that position. You were turned away.
I was, when I had a bad crisis with my mental health, I addressed the cross lanes and I was turned away and I was left by myself to figure out what I had to do next. It was a really traumatizing experience. I wouldn't like to see anybody else have to go through what I did. So I just ask, please, if there is change, for it to go ahead.
And here we go again, another vulnerable section of society being thrown under the bus time and time again. I know, Noel, you did want to get in, briefly.
There are about 400 suicides, successful suicides, if you can say successful suicides, a year in Ireland. And for every suicide, there are 25 attempts. The amount of distress that causes to the people concerned, to the families, to our society, horrific.
We do get that. Ronan, briefly.
Look, we're talking about a lot of the same solutions, but there is that plan that's launched here, that health reform plan. We're 7 years into it. We've only hit year 3 in targets. That's the way to deliver this, and that's the way to take health and mental health out of politics and to make sure that these targets are achieved.
Okay, Linda, briefly.
You should never have been turned away. And I can promise you that if I get into government, I'll be making sure people like you are never turned away again.
Heather.
There's 49 recommendations made by the Mental Health Commission. People are talking here about the need for leads and this kind of stuff. We already have the recommendations. It is the political will to implement those recommendations which is absent, which is leading to those teams and CAMs being understaffed and underfunded.
Aisling, very briefly before we go.
Yeah, Sharon, thanks for sharing your story. And I'm sure if there's anyone listening out there, I hope you will inspire them to step forward now, seeing where you are today with us. Some parties are advocating that we pull down CAMs, get rid of it and start again. We don't have time for that. We need reform. We need to engage with Sharon. We need to engage with organisations like
Sometimes it's easier to
ours.
break it up and start from the beginning when you particularly look at the dog's dinner the CAMS is.
Okay.
Okay. Aisling, thank you for that. That's Aisling Dempsey. So that question from Sharon Lynch. We'll have another question after the break. Welcome back to us to Trim. This is our third and final debate. I'm going to throw one of those questions that will probably put our panel on edge. It's a quick question. Where am I going to start? Peadar, cost of living crisis has been top of the agenda throughout a lot of the debates, and I'm sure you're hearing it on the doorstep. So with that in mind, how much would you pay for a large sliced pan?
$2.50.
Linda?
2.
Ronan?
Just over €2.
No.
I don't eat bread.
I love that answer. Aisling?
About €2.
Finbar?
232.
I bake my own.
Johnny?
270 Pat the Baker.
Okay, there you go. Not a million miles off, just testing, that's all. We're not going to tell you because the price varies. We reckon it's somewhere around the 2-ish, slightly south of 2 and north of 2 or thereabouts. But anyway, let's get to our next question. Robin Marshall is a volunteer with Mental Homeless Outreach and Meath Outreach and joins us this morning. Robin, thanks for joining us. Before we get into the question, I just perhaps want you to tell the story about a young woman who was homeless for a number of days in this bitterly cold weather, and there was no support for her.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've all woken up this morning and it's frosty out there. I mean, imagine staying out in that weather. It's freezing. Now, this particular issue, young lady, I mean, everyone who's outside their home at night has some sort of issue in that, whether that's financial, mental health, or just circumstances. For this lady, though, in her early 20s, outside in the cold, we got a call from the guards. I mean, that's shocking. I mean, we got a call from the guards to say, is there something that we could do? Outside of Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, you cannot get help if you're homeless. There's no starting block. You're going to voluntary groups like ourselves, and we're volunteers, we're just people in the neighborhood. But to get a call from the guards at 10 o'clock saying, can you come and do something? It's like shocking. So the circumstances are unfortunate. This lady does have issues, but you can't be left outside at night. It's just not on.
So how was it resolved?
The guards took her to a hotel. A hotel is not a suitable place to start with for somebody who's got, mental health issues or any issues. Then we were asked, could we help out? We paid the bill. That's what's floating around at the moment. Volunteers are picking up the tab for accommodation in emergency situations for people who are out on the streets. Some people I know of now are living in cars. There's one chap who's in his car for 3 years now. He's got no accommodation. He's stuck in a loop. There's another individual who's sleeping in a tent. I mean, that's shocking. It's freezing out there. This shouldn't be. But my issue is, who do they go to? They shouldn't be knocking on neighbours to put their hands in their pockets to get them accommodation. That's just shocking. It should be that there should be somebody they can call. Out of hours, we need to be able to pick up a phone and say, there's a certain individual, got issues, in an emergency, it is a crisis. What do they do?
Okay, let's put that particular story to our panel. And again, it would be a common story that you will hear over and over again. And it is shocking to think that we're now at question 3 on this debate, and there's no silver lining. It's the same issues that are coming up over and over again. No support for the marginalised, no help, nobody cares. How is it possible in this day and age that our outreach systems are 9 to 5? Pat Tobin ain't to.
Yes, just in the last year, we in Aintu put forward an amendment in the Dáil which calls for a no-fault eviction ban for people with cancer, people with a terminal illness, for pensioners and for mothers who are pregnant. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens voted against that. And I think that just shows you where these parties are at in terms of this particular issue. We have currently 100,000 empty homes in this state at the moment. The government are giving grants out to refurbish those, but they're given 5 every month, which means it'll take 1,600 years for the government just to bring the empty homes that are in this state back into use. Now, empty homes in a housing crisis is equivalent to having ships leave the country with food in the middle of a famine. There's actually 4,000 empty local authority homes currently. It's taken on average 8 months to get those local authority homes back into use when they're turned around after a use. It takes 3 weeks for private rental accommodation to be brought back into use. We have a major problem with this government's inability to deliver infrastructural projects, and we see it right across
Thank you for that. Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil.
Thanks for your question, and it's an incredibly sad and touching story. And you know, like all councillors, unfortunately, we've had a number of them each over the years, or many of them over the years, and it's often you feel very helpless, as you say. The services aren't there. You take it home with you at night. It's very difficult to deal with. It's a complex issue. We all know that. There are many, many reasons why people are homeless. And I suppose the biggest way to fix that is housing supply. We've 27,000 homes across the country, either at design or at construction stage, and that is how we will solve this. I canvassed the other night in Carnaross with Councillor Sean Drew and came across a lady, you know, in a lovely, warm, comfortable house with her 3 sons. When he met her first, she was at breaking point, and that is what we as TDs, or potential TDs, need to keep our focus on.
Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil, thank you for that. Lyndon Nelson Murray, Fine Gael.
Thanks very much, Robin. There's no doubt we are in a housing crisis, and we have a massive job to do. I am familiar with that poor man in the car. I do. My understanding is he was offered accommodation, but it just didn't suit him. But yeah, nobody should be in any cars, and people shouldn't be homeless. There's no doubt about that. Look, there's a huge need for housing, and we've a lot more people in the country. And we also, you know, one of the biggest reasons for the need of housing in Meath County Council is the breakup of marriages, which can sadly happen as well. So, you know, you have to remember 16 years ago, we were building no houses. The country was at rock bottom. We're trying to recover from that. And during COVID, we were building no houses. We're trying to recover from that. So there is a plan. The only way to get people into houses is to build more, and we need to build a lot more. I think we're up at 40,000 houses this year, and the hope is that we will start to build 50 and 60,000 houses. In Meath alone, we've built 12,196 new homes since 2016. And what I love to see is that there's been 5,500 claims for the Help to Buy scheme. Okay. So there is plans there. There needs to be more, and we need to open up the vacant properties that are there, Alan, as well, and let people live there.
I don't want to speak for you, Robin, but it strikes me we're not on point here in relation to the question. The question being, how do we stop situations, as outlined by Robin, where there's no services available between 9 and 5. We need to have intervention immediately. Building houses takes time, and that's fine, but it's about the here and now. Finbar Lynch, People Before Profit, Solidarity.
Our position is that there's no excuse for homelessness. This story is obviously incredibly shocking and relates to what I said in the last question in relation to the physical and mental health impacts of homelessness, but we've 166,000 properties vacant in the country, as according to the last census. 5 to 6% of homes in Meath are vacant. We need to be looking here. We're calling for more punitive use it or lose it policies on these properties. We're calling for them to be CPO'd, taken back into public ownership by the councils. And aside from that, emergency accommodation is offered often by for-profit providers or charities. This is another example of the destructive role of the profit motive in housing. We need, if emergency accommodation is necessary, it should be provided by the state. We need to end the bonanza for landlords and developers, and the state should provide emergency accommodation, but obviously we need to go beyond that and build social and affordable housing at scale.
Okay, Finbar Lynch, People Before Profit, Solidarity. Let's go to Ronan Moore of the Social Democrats.
Thanks, Robin, for your story. Look, the government policy has utterly failed in this. We've record homelessness, we've record children's homelessness, we've record house prices, record rents. There's no point hiding behind anything but government failure. At the last election, Micheál Martin promised 50,000 affordable homes. That's what he promised. He delivered, with his Minister for Housing, just under 3,000 affordable homes. Another key thing, they ended the no-fault eviction ban. I mean, we're an outlier in Europe. Like, how can it be that a family can be paying their rent, doing their work, and then simply being evicted because of no other reason except the landlord chooses to sell?
I'm sorry for interrupting, but it's important to point out perhaps the landlord needs to sell that maybe one of his sons or daughters, like he or she himself, may be homeless.
Which is true, but I still have to explain. I'm explaining to my eldest son that one of his best friends is leaving. He's emigrating because he was been in school for years, but the father cannot find any other accommodation, and thankfully he has an opportunity to go overseas. But many other families, and fine, I understand the situation in terms of house building to get that gentleman out of, to be able to have his own home. But for many other families, it means they're having to leave accommodation, and there was nowhere else to go. For ourselves as Social Democrats, we would bring back no-fault eviction to deal with that, and we look at the Land Development Agency to actually to make sure that it has teeth, that it is building on state land, but ultimately has the powers to CPO land in around towns and villages, front load your infrastructure, and then it'll start delivering a whole variety of types of homes, including affordable homes, which I think is the key.
I gave you a bit of extra time because I could have crossed your own, so apologies for that. Where am I going to? Seamus McMahon with the Green Party.
So, Robin, I'll actually answer your question if that's okay. There is evidence that there is a model that works for the people that you're describing, and that's the Housing First model, which was, I think, originally pioneered in Finland. So this is where you give people supported housing. So people in that situation would not just be given accommodation or a hotel room. They'd be given supported housing with the wraparound services that they need. And one of the things that we've established in our manifesto is we would actually set up a homeless prevention office in each local authority. So rather than just dealing with the crisis when it happens, the solution to that was not when you got the phone call at 10 o'clock at night. The solution would have come, weeks or months before that if there was a body specifically looking at that. And the housing department in the council is not set up for that purpose. It's set up for the other cases that have been discussed. And lastly, we would actually hold a referendum on the right to housing, because we think that that's the only way we can guarantee that any future government will act on all of the promises that you'll be hearing
Seamus McMahon, Green Party, thank you for that. No French non-party.
I would like to see a homeless shelter in Meath. I would like to see, as Seamus said, much more supported accommodation for people. A lot of people who are homeless are suffering, as you say, from mental illness, various other things. They need accommodation, but they also need supports. And we have a small unit in Navan. I think it's about 8 people, operated by Peter McVerry. But eight people, and again, sometimes the people in there have such difficulties that other people refuse to go in there because they may have drug problems and they're not prepared to go in there. The homeless shelter that operates here within Meath Loud, I'm on the board of that. It's recently acquired 3 houses in Navan. I would really love to see a homeless shelter and much more supported.
No French non-party, thank you for that. And you raised an interesting point in relation to homeless shelters and shelters for refugees or immigrants or whatever. We all want them, but not in my back garden. NIMBYism comes into play, and it's just a circle that keeps going round and round, and we never get the solution to it. Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin.
Yeah, thanks, Robin, and thanks for the work yourself and Alan Laws do for the homeless in Meath, and you do it at the weekend when no one else is going to do it, so I appreciate that, and well done. I would have called Meath County Council a lot of times, Robin, about issues with homelessness, and the only accommodation that we seem to be able to get is emergency accommodation in Drogheda. There is very, very little available, if any, in Meath. Bringing children up in emergency accommodation, we've heard earlier, like the mental health effects it has on them, and that. But Sinn Féin has recently published the most comprehensive and detailed plan of any party to fix the housing crisis. With Ona Breen as housing minister, we are ready to hit the ground running in government. Ending the housing crisis would be the #1 priority for Sinn Féin in government, and that's the only way you will sort out the long-term homeless crisis in Meath and everywhere else.
Okay, Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin, thank you for that. Robin.
If I was homeless, if I had nowhere to go to tonight and I was in Dublin, there's a phone number. Why isn't there not one in County Meath? Why doesn't every county have one? Tonight is the issue. Tonight's the crisis. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do after 5 o'clock? How much is it going to take to put a phone call through to somebody who could at least steer me in the right direction? That's the issue. Houses are obviously needed, accommodations obviously needed, but the crisis is tonight. What are we doing tonight?
Simple solution, Pather-wise, and put in place.
Yeah, it's credible. People who are homeless are actually going to Dublin in terms of being able to try and get access. And we in Aontú found out that 400 people have died in homelessness in Dublin on the streets just in the last 6 years. And that figure is not even collected anywhere. No other local authority measures the number of people who are dying on the streets in homelessness. And that's something we want to see, because if you can't measure the outcomes of this crazy policy, how are you meant to provide the services that are necessary there? And there has to be a 24-hour phone line.
Johnny, I'll let you in briefly. Padder, thank you for that. Johnny Gurr.
Yeah, in the last year alone, we have 10% increase in house prices. Homeless figures, child homelessness up every month. We need to ban
Yeah, but
rent
it's not
increases.
answering the question, Johnny. The question is, what are you going to do tonight, now, the here and now, and that's what matters.
Well, we do need Meath County Council to have a 7-day service where people like Alan can get service to for those people. Now, I've spoke to Alan about that before. That needs to be done straight away, and we need more services in County Meath at the moment.
Okay, Johnny Gurr, Sinn Féin, thank you for that. Let's take a break. Welcome back to us here in Trim in County Meath. We're just coming up to 25 minutes to 11. We're on air for a little bit longer this morning, staying with you until midday today. It's the final debate in election 2024, one of three which we have had so far. We're offering you the opportunity, because we may have a little bit of time left at the end of the debate, where we will try and get as many questions in from the listeners. If you want to put a question to our panel, you can do so. We have a designated email address. It's election@lmfm.ie. That's election@lmfm.ie. And if we have time towards the end of the programme, we'll be more than happy to do that for you. Now, let's press on. Amanda Alty, Meath Women's Refuge and Support Services, joins us this morning. Amanda, good morning.
Hi, good morning. So I just wanted to start by saying that I know that there has been an increase in awareness about domestic, sexual, and gender-based violence in recent years, and we are very grateful for all the progress that's been made on that front. However, there is still a very common misconception that it's easy for a woman to leave an abusive relationship once she makes the decision to do so, when in reality the systemic barriers that are in place often mean that a woman has to choose between being propelled into poverty or staying in a relationship that is unsafe for her and for her children. So Meath Women's Refuge and Support Services has recently released our 10 calls of action to candidates running in the general election. These actions could be transformative in reducing and working towards eliminating domestic, sexual, gender-based violence in our county. One of the calls to action outlines the need for increased investment in social and affordable housing, additional refuge beds, and step-down homes. The lack of available housing is a major deterrent to women leaving abusive relationships and establishing long-term homes. There is currently no separate homelessness strategy for domestic violence victims, and the majority of women and children leaving refuge after fleeing violence are now going into transitional or homeless accommodation. I know that we were recently approved funding for our 12-unit refuge. However, it's important to note that our refuge stays are only about 3 months. So again, that means, unfortunately, that women are having to go into emergency accommodation. Can you please affirm your commitment to addressing this issue and outline the strategies that you would use to removing obstacles and increasing accessibility to victim survivors seeking stable housing that's independent from perpetrators of abuse?
Okay, Amanda Halty, thank you for that. I presume you probably appreciate the fact that the Minister for Justice is doing something. The small, I think there was one programme rolled out, was in Waterford or Wexford recently.
Yes, yeah.
And something similar happening here, but we'll probably get into that a little bit more. Now, what we have here is a situation of housing. You've outlined the position in relation to the long-term strategy about housing, but we're not talking long-term here. We are talking about facilities that can be put in place to allow women who are in a situation of an abusive relationship that they can move almost instantly and have access to support and accommodation that they can bring their children if required. So with that in mind, Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil, to you first.
For coming in and to the Meath Women's Refuge Support Services for their great work. I'm contacted, unfortunately, from time to time from women in that situation, and the first thing they say to me is, I want to get out of this house. How am I going to get away from here? And I don't feel properly equipped to answer that question for a woman, and I've often referred to your services. I just, slightly off topic, but I do think councillors and TDs would really benefit from training from the likes of yourselves on how to deal with those situations. I think women feel so helpless. I've read your asks. One of the ones that I really loved was the medical card. I think independence of your abuser and the perpetrator of that violence is really, really important. We have invested money, as you said, you recognise that, but there is more we need. We do need those step-down facilities. That is a really practical and invaluable way of helping women and children leave these really abusive, difficult situations.
Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil, to Padda Tobin of Ain too.
Yeah, first of all, there's been a 5-fold increase, incredibly, in the number of domestic violence calls to the Gardaí just in the last 5 years. So this issue is actually getting worse across the country. We still have about 9 counties which have no actually domestic violence refuge or women's refuge at all. We're not near the Istanbul Convention, number for the number of beds that we need in this sector. We believe that there should be a dedicated capital fund for step-down homes within this country. It needs to be separated out in terms of the rest of the housing crisis to make sure that women who find themselves in this situation have somewhere to go fast in relation. I do think the housing crisis is locking many women into this horrific situation, and that needs to change. Another issue that we stood up for in the last number of years is to try and keep cash in circulation, and believe it or not, access to cash gives women in this situation independence so that they can make sure that they can make plans for themselves financially as well in scenarios where they're being horrendously abused.
Padda Tobin of Ain too. Finbar Lynch, People Before Profit, Solidarity.
Istanbul Convention but haven't ratified it, and it says that we need 472 beds in Ireland to meet demand, and yes, there are 9 counties that don't have a refuge at all. We think that should be seen as a minimum, not a target, which is what is set out in the Istanbul Convention. We also think that the housing crisis, the cost of living crisis, the childcare crisis and healthcare crisis disproportionately affect women because they're seen as carers and are disproportionately were frontline workers during COVID. Yes, it's the highest level of calls around domestic violence, with an 18% increase on last year. In terms of what we're calling for, we want more family shelters. For example, you might have older children, say an 18-year-old son in a family might be left in an abusive situation because of the kind of the way the shelters are run at the moment. We think we need to offer women hope and to show them compassion and care with wholesale investment in housing, healthcare, mental health care and childcare, as well as providing more resources for legal aid to process those services more quickly.
For-profit solidarity. Thank you for that. Linda Nelson-Murray from Fine Gael.
Thanks very much, and thanks for coming in today. And I just think, I know you set off by saying it, but I think we actually do have an amazing minister who's put an awful lot into this, and I think we have to recognise the work that Minister Helen McEntee has done. We've worked very hard on the domestic, sexual and gender-based violence, and we need zero tolerance, just to start it off. We've agreed 8.9 million, as you rightly pointed out, amazing, 12 beds in Navan. And I think Meath Women's Refuge, in fairness to you, have just set the standard for the rest of the country. An amazing job, and I'm always involved in all the things that you do. We'll have 280 beds by 2026. I appreciate that we're going to need a lot more. We need to review the breach of order laws, and we need to commence a new family court system, I think, that takes to mind the role of the mother, the children, but in some cases the men as well. And there's a huge increase in the amount of men that are experiencing domestic violence as well, and sometimes they also need to be moved. So it's about a central judicial system that will allow the courts to decide where it's best place for children or men and women. So that's
Linda,
what I'd like to see happen.
Linda Nelson-Murray, Fine Gael, thank you for that. Let's go to the Green Party, Seamus McMahon.
Hello. One of the issues I think I met with yourselves before the local election with some of the European candidates, and one of the issues that was discussed there was about the type of funding, and one of the things that we thought would be useful would be multi-annual funding that would allow you to plan for progressing the service, and not, because obviously you've got women who are at the front of all of the issues we talked today in terms of accommodation, perhaps mental health issues, all of these things coming, and you're in the situation then when they have to leave the refuge, there's nowhere for them to go. So I think one of the things that we did when we were in government was we introduced domestic violence leave, which is only a token amount at the minute. We'd like to expand that so that if a woman does have to leave a relationship, that at least there be some protection around her income so that she wouldn't be penalised. And one of the issues is sometimes there isn't space in the county where she's from, and she may have to go to refuge in another county, so actually keeping working is a problem. So we think that it does come down to funding, but it's also how it's funded. Like, how can you plan if you're only getting your funding year on year? And that's one of the things we'd like to change.
Seamus McMahon with the Green Party. Let's go to Ronan Moore for the Social Democrats.
Thanks, Amanda. Look, the UN describes domestic violence as the most prevalent human rights violation in the world. And the Social Democrats recognise this, and as such we've published a standalone policy on domestic, sexual and gender-based violence. I think we're one of the few parties to do so. I think, Pat, I had a look through your manifesto, and I think there's just 2 lines on domestic violence.
Hold on, Pat, I'll let you, please.
I think there is only 2 lines, and that's not nearly enough. You need to go much further. We've published a raft of measures, but to speak specifically to your point, domestic violence is a leading cause of homelessness for women. Victims of domestic violence for us should be named as a priority category in the next housing strategy. They should be taken as a priority category at the county council level in the allocation of social housing. And also, I think we have to enact specific legislation to remove perpetrators of domestic violence from the family home and stop the forced homelessness of victims, which are predominantly women and children. This is something that happens in other countries like New Zealand, Australia, and I think it needs to be done here as well.
Okay, Ronan, thanks for that. Very briefly, Pat, just to clarify the point.
So Ronan's wrong, and anybody should go onto the website and have a look, and they'll see there's actually a full section in relation to that. And actually, we've raised this issue
clarification,
and the fact that it doesn't increase more than practically any other political party.
I've got to move on, Pather. So, Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin.
Amanda, thanks. Sinn Féin would provide 20 million of additional current expenditure, ensuring a dedicated rape crisis centre, including a SATU helpline, a court accompaniment and counselling services, providing additional funding required to enable the Children's Ombudsman to fulfil its remit in the new violence against women strategy, establishing a statutory flea fund, grants to range from 500 leave money and 2,500 to set up a new home, depending on the circumstances, ensuring the additional annual cost of funding business case plans by domestic violence services to Cuan as part of a new national service development plan, raising the disposable income threshold for legal aid in domestic violence cases, ensuring each domestic violence service which provides accommodation has access to a medical card for clients while they are staying there, ensuring multidisciplinary domestic homicide reviews take place, and providing €75 capital funding beyond what has already been pre-committed for domestic violence shelters.
Johnny Girk, Sinn Féin, thank you for that. But no, Linda, please, Linda, no French, non-party.
I get a good number of calls from women in abusive relationships, and I'm horrified, speechless. horrified doesn't describe it. I'm so glad I can recommend them to go on to the Meath Women's Refuge. We need to empower these women because a lot of them are in horrible, horrible situations. We need to support them to have an opportunity to flee abusive relationships. And part of that opportunity to flee abusive relationship is exactly as you say, more investment in supported and affordable housing. And you know, children involved in these things, displaced, put into homeless services and so on. It's just horrific. We do, as Johnny said, we do need a dedicated rape crisis centre for Meath. And I think Aisling mentioned about medical cards for all refugee occupants. We need to make it as easy as possible for women to get out of these horrible,
Okay, no French of non-party. Thank you for that. I know there's a number of people who want to jump in. If we can, we will do it after the break, but I want to leave the final word after the break with Amanda Alty. That's coming up next.
Election.
Meath, we are heading into the final stages of our final debate of election 2024. We were speaking prior to the break to Amanda Alty of the Meath Women's Refuge and Support Services. Amanda, you listened to the panel. What is your view?
Yes, so thank you everyone for your responses there. I suppose a couple of candidates had said that the best case scenario would be if the perpetrator could be removed from the home, and we would absolutely agree with that. That is the best case scenario for a mother or a woman who's typically the primary caregiver of the children to be able to stay in the family home. The children can continue to go to the same school, so we absolutely would agree with that. However, I think that would involve strengthening the criminal justice system around breaches, as was mentioned, and also the family law system. I also think it's important to note that even when someone has a barring order in place, the perpetrator's name is not removed from the housing application, which is absolutely a barrier for women. So thank you for your response, and I suppose we just are hoping to continue to implement the third national strategy and looking for that commitment from each of you.
Okay, Amanda, thank you for that. I perhaps just want to scratch a little bit more on the surface on this in relation to your own experiences of women. Are there women in situations today who may be listening who are, number one, frightened to leave the home, don't know how to do it, and are not aware of the supports? And in your own experience, have you come across women who remain in violent situations in the home because there's no support for them?
Absolutely. I think all of the issues that have been discussed today around housing and mental health, those are all issues that women who are experiencing domestic violence are acutely aware of. And that is a huge barrier for them to be able to leave an abusive relationship. They're not leaving because they don't want to leave. They are not leaving because they don't know how long they can leave for, if they're going to have to go back to the perpetrator. If they go back to the perpetrator, is that going to be increasing their level of risk and their level of danger? And it's extremely frightening for women. So the choice to leave is extremely difficult. The choice to stay is extremely difficult. And I suppose a lot of women don't feel like there are systems in place to really bolster them up to be able to leave long term.
Okay, Amanda, thank you for that. I'll take one or two. If somebody wants to jump in, Robin, you're first on the buzzer. Go on.
Again, I probably just butchers exactly what you're saying, Amanda. I think sometimes the language of when we talk about domestic violence and this idea of people have been able to flee, it really is a case of making sure that people stay in their homes, because it is one of the number one reasons of homelessness with women. Thank you.
Okay, that was Ronan Moore, by the way, Social Democrats. Peadar, briefly.
Yeah, there are 128 call-outs a day to Gardaí in terms of domestic violence. And I've worked actually with two former CEOs of the Rape Crisis Centre in terms of trying to get a Rape Crisis Centre access here in Meath, and I'm delighted that in recent times there has been some work with the Rape Crisis Centre in providing consultation for people who have suffered from rape here in the county as well.
Okay,
so that's
thanks for that. I'll come to you in a moment, Linda. I just want to go to Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil.
Thanks. Yeah, it was mentioned here that there's been a huge increase in cases, and my hope and my belief would be that through work like that of the Meath Women's Refuge Support Services, that actually the stigma is being removed from it, and that is why reporting is up. I think you do invaluable work in that. We've launched the Zero Tolerance Project, and I'm really proud to be a part of that for the 16 days of action. Thanks.
Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil. I want to go to Linda Nelson-Murray from Fine Gael.
No, it was just to come back on Johnny Girk and the 20 million euro. Sounded like, I don't know, you're in a sweet shop there. I think Sinn Féin would have a lot to answer for in terms of things that they could help women with in terms of abuse through the years. But anyway, just another thing that women would be faced with after getting out of a home, which I came across recently, is even if they go to apply for a passport, they still have to go back to the person that they've left and actually get it signed. Something as small as that we have to sort out. They shouldn't have to go back to that person who has made their life hell. So that's something else that I'd like to work on.
Okay, Linda, I'll have to allow Johnny in there, but can you just be specific again, because I kind of got lost. What's your allegation?
No, it's Johnny. When you started, you spoke about 20 million euros that you're going to put into a rape crisis centre, and you had a long list of what was underneath that with the money that was spent, the money that you're saying that you're going to spend. You'd have to spend a lot more, is what I'm saying. And I just think, given the history of what we have read and seen about some women, and maybe how they weren't treated fairly when it came to things that happened to them, that I think Sinn Féin should take this a lot more seriously.
Okay, Johnny.
Linda, You're blaming Sinn Féin for your failures in government, failures in housing, failures in health, failures in the cost of living. Hold on a second now. Why is Amanda here? Because she's talking about the failures in domestic violence. You had 14 years in government to deal with the...
Linda, please,
Linda,
due respect.
you had 14 years in government to deal with these issues. Every single one of them you have made worse. So don't talk about Sinn Féin, who have never got a chance in government. Talk about your own party, who's been there for 14 years.
Yeah, I think we've done very well on domestic.
Okay, well, let me just put that accusation and the counter then to Amanda. Amanda.
I think it's important to say that we are very grateful for the progress that has been made, that there has been a huge amount of progress just in the short time that I've lived in Ireland. I'm originally from the States. I've lived here for 4 years, and there has been a huge increase in awareness and the support given to victims of domestic violence. I suppose what we're hoping for is we really need to keep that going, and it's still, as you said, just kind of scratching the surface. So we have to be able to dive deeper into some of these issues and the more kind of structural issues. But I suppose, I would say that I would agree that a lot of work has been done.
Okay, we've got to press on. Yeah, finally, Finbar, very briefly.
The question of whether domestic violence is more common or being reported more often, I think there are figures like Andrew Tate on social media who are broadcasting really negative views, horrible views about women. But aside from that, regardless of how many people are suffering domestic violence, what kind of stigma is there, the resources aren't there provided by this government in order to actually facilitate that.
Okay, Finbar Lynch, People Before Profit Solidarity, and that's where we leave that. Amanda Alty of the Meath Women's Refuge and Support Services, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we want to go to a break before we come back to the next issue, which is around farming. But let's take a break there. Back after the break, let's press on to the Irish Farmers Association next. We're joined by Fergal Hennessy, who's Deputy Chair of the National Farmers Business Committee with the IFA. Fergal, good morning. Thank you for joining us. What is focusing the mind of farmers in this constituency?
Thank you very much, Alan. After hearing all the emotive issues raised by the other contributors, my issues might seem a bit prosaic by comparison, but it was mentioned last week by Minister Byrne that agriculture is worth 9 billion with a B to the Meath economy. But beyond that, especially in North Meath, its value to the social fabric and rural communities is beyond doubt. While we have a lot of positives in agriculture currently, we do have several issues. The nitrates derogation is a very, very big issue, and it must be maintained going forward. We have a food regulator who, by her own statements, by her own opinion, does not have the sufficient power to do her job properly, to hold processors and supermarkets to account so that we have a fully transparent food system. The Mercosur deal is something that is very, very worrying for farmers across Europe, in that the standards of food that will be imported to compete with us will be nowhere near what we are producing. But the two main issues that we are facing in Meath as farmers is red tape, bureaucracy. It is something that is across the board in Irish society, but within agriculture it has become unbearable. We want to be out in our fields, working the land, working our animals, producing food, not set at computers or at desks, filling form after form, which is a lot of duplication and a lot of replication. And also we have an issue in that we feel that a lot of issues are being imposed on us without any consultation. It was mentioned by my colleague Dermot Ward, the Meath chairman, last week, that a committee has been set up on carbon trading, and a number of stakeholders have been brought onto that committee. There's no farmers on that committee, no farmer representation on that committee. We had a situation last year with Minister McConalogue with the straw incorporation scheme. He made a pronouncement, a decision without any consultation, and that had to be rolled back within a couple of weeks because it wasn't workable. We also have an acre scheme which is proven not fit for purpose. It was brought in without any or very, very little farmer consultation. So my question to the panellists today would be, first of all, will you give an absolute commitment that farmers will be properly consulted about any issue that will directly impact us and our lives? And secondly, how in real terms will you go about reducing the red tape and the bureaucracy that we have to deal with? Thank you.
Okay, Fergal Hennessy of the Meath IFA, thank you for that. There's quite a number of things you brought up there, but perhaps we could address one or two of them very quickly in a yes-no. You brought up Mercosur. Let's fly around the table. Johnny, Mercosur, yes or no?
No.
Seamus?
No.
Finbar? Sorry,
No.
no.
Sorry.
Aisling?
No.
Heather?
No.
Linda?
No.
No. Nitrates derogation. Johnny? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, Seamus?
It's coming to an end, unfortunately, so we have to plan for it.
Okay, Finbar?
End it.
Aisling?
What was, sorry?
The nitrates
I
derogation.
thought it was a yes, no.
It's, yeah,
We'll
it's yes,
be
no.
fighting to keep it.
Okay, Heather?
We want to keep it, but these government
Yeah, there's
parties
always a
are
vote
actually
which are
but these
involved.
government
Linda,
parties are
Linda.
saying different what they delivered in
Okay,
government.
Ronan?
Speak for yourself.
No, need plan B.
Yes.
Okay, let's get to one of the big issues, and it came up in our last debate, and it's incredible to think that decisions are being made in relation to farmers' livelihoods and their future without them being present at the table. There are key stakeholders, but they're not there. Let's start with you, Pather.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you look at farmers received a 57% cut in their incomes last year. Only a third of farmers at the moment are actually making a living fully off the farm. A third of farmers have somebody off the farm earning a second income to make themselves viable. We want a competition authority. We said that very clearly. Food is very profitable, but most of the profit is landing at the factory and the supermarket. And the farmer who's actually dealing with food in most instances is getting less and less. We produced an equitable beef price bill, which would put a floor under the price of beef for an emergency period of time. It was supported by Fianna Fáil while they were in opposition, and they voted against it when in government. We absolutely believe the farmers should be at the centre of consultation. During the beef protests, I was elected as a representative of farmers in North East Meath to represent them at those discussions, and I've actually gone to the High Court to represent farmers who were suffering from threatened injunctions in relation to that. Agriculture is the poor relation, I think, in this government's policy in this country. I think the two major parties have become very Dublin-centric. They're not seeing beyond the M50, and they need to wake up to what the farmers are suffering.
I want to go to you next, Linda Nelson Murray, Fine Gael.
Sure. Look, I'm from a business background, and I've, in this role, I've gone and spoke to the farmers at Carn Ross Mart, met with Macron and Pharma, met with you guys last week at the IFA meeting that you had. And what I'm hearing is that farms aren't viable. A lot of farms aren't viable, and we need to make sure that they are. Like a business is, and that's what I'd be pushing for, to support farmers. They need to be around the table, 200%. We need to fight for a fair share of the CAP budget. We need to make sure that the red tape is simplified for farmers. You're supposed to be on the land. As you said, you're not supposed to be sitting at a computer. That needs to be done. And too many of you are having to hire people to do that, which is costing money. We need to strengthen the powers of the independent agri-food regulator. Obviously, the Mercosur deal, as we said, it's not acceptable the way it presently stands, and we will not accept it. And we need more, I suppose, in terms of the payments for suckler cows, for sheep. They all need to be increased. I think we're up to €300 for those. So support them in any way we
Nelson
can.
Murray there, Fine Gael. But just to stay on point here, there's two specific issues we're talking about. That's stakeholder engagement on the part of the farming community when it comes to matters of concern for them. They feel they're being excluded from it. And the red tape, the bureaucracy. Ronan Moore, Social Democrats.
Yeah, look, I live in the countryside. Anyone who does recognises just how important farmers are. Straightforward. In terms of actually including farmers in consultations, Social Democrats 100% yes. Like, as you mentioned, the Carbon Farming Working Group set up, as you said, last year. Like, it's there to try and affect changes. And how can you affect changes when the main stakeholders who you want to affect change, who are the custodians of our land, are not even present? I mean, there are going to be conflicts of ideas and decisions, but ultimately you need people around the table to make those conversations. Like, for ourselves, we feel that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael traditionally will put themselves forward as the party of the farmers, but in many ways, I think a lot of small and medium farmers have been left behind. The red tape, it's so administrative burden for small and medium farmers particularly. It needs to be, supports need to be there. But I think for ourselves, like, a lot of the practices that have been incentivised by the government have oftentimes been to the detriment of the kind of the countryside in terms of state policy. And for ourselves as Social Democrats, we want to have a 1.5 billion fair transition fund to help heavily indebted farmers who've invested in, say, dairy infrastructure and need to kind of start moving their way out, because the nitrates is something that is coming to an end. We need to have that plan.
Ronan, we've got to leave there. Ronan Moore, Social Democrats. No French, non-party.
I was raised on a farm, worked in the dairy industry, long-term member of Macron and Pharma. Farming is hugely important as a business and as a life in our country and countryside. Yes, absolutely, farmers need to be represented on the CO2 working group. They need to be consulted more with regard to the acres and environmental scheme. To a certain extent, I see agriculture as being stigmatised as the cause for a lot of climate problems. I think we have a huge other alternative ways of dealing with climate in other ways, along with farmers. I don't think farmers are going to be found wanting addressing climate change. So, and red tape, absolutely. When it starts coming into quadruplet forms, describing something 4 different ways, it's crazy.
Okay, no French non-party. Thank you for that. Let me just put another quick yes or no question to you. A cull of the national herd. Noel.
No.
Ronan. Linda.
No.
Peter,
No,
Heather?
but the government are
No.
effectively imposing it.
No.
Aisling.
Absolutely.
Seamus.
Yes.
No.
Johnny. Okay. Let's get to the two main topics brought up here by the IFA. Aisling, over to you.
Thank you, and I hate to disagree with the person asking the question, but your issue isn't minor, and it's very important to us, to me as a candidate, and to Fianna Fáil. Rural families and farming life is, I suppose, the heartbeat of this country and of this county, And I was at that IFA meeting the other night, and as I said there, I'm not from a farming background directly. I have family obviously involved in farming, but being not from it directly, the amount that I learned in that couple of hours, it's all well and good reading legislation and strategies and manifestos, but to actually sit in the room and listen to the farmers was key for me to understanding the issues. And I fully support that there is too much red tape. I think, look, in terms of CAP funding, which we have done very well in increasing over the last few years, that's European money. That is just bureaucratic. There's a lot of red tape around it. But the farmers there told us there were too many small schemes. The combining of those schemes would be such a help, and that is something that I will work towards.
Ashling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil, thank you for that. Finbar Lynch, People Before Profit, Solidarity.
While small farmers have been struggling, the three biggest companies in Ireland three big companies in Ireland are the biggest beef processors. We would support reform for common agricultural policy, where Pillar 1 payments since 2004, 80% of that money has gone to 20% of farmers. Small farmers are the most productive, who provide a lot of services for the environment in terms of carbon sequestration and biodiversity services. But 56,000 small farmers have a second job in order to support themselves. They can't support themselves or their family with the farming job alone. This is why we support a dairy herd reduction scheme, capping the herd at 200 cattle, and a new farming for biodiversity scheme as well.
Okay, Seamus McMenamin, the Green Party.
So I'm from a farm family myself, and the reason I'm not farming is because the business wasn't viable anymore. So we're acutely aware of the issues. But in terms of solutions, in terms of engagement, I mean, we mentioned about the nitrates derogation. We think it probably will come to an end. And what we've actually suggested, we set up a cross-departmental task force with farmer involvement to develop a water action plan. And that's either going to prove that we can maintain water quality and keep the derogation, or we need to plan for what happens if it becomes clear that that's not going to happen. And I think one of the issues we need to avoid is just listening to promises from people at national level when most of these decisions are taken at European level. So we might wish to keep it, other parties might say we will fight for it, but fight doesn't mean winning. So we have to make sure that we protect that. And the other thing about the red tape, we would actually use the Climate Nature Restoration Fund to change the model to fund activities that we want. So we had bad land, we had 10 acres of bog. If my father got funding to use that as a carbon store, we'd probably still be farming today. So from that basis, we think, we agree, work with farmers is important, and there is funding there to actually make
Seamus,
farming viable.
I've got to stop you there. Seamus McMenamin, the Green Party. Johnny Gark, finally to you, Sinn Féin.
Yeah, Fergal, of course you should be involved in any negotiations regarding farming and red tape, Fergal, across the board. It doesn't matter what you're involved in, red tape is crazy. It takes so long to get anything done. And I think a couple of other things, Fergal, is I think payments to farmers are too slow. Where they have to wait for grant payments, and it takes an awful long time. And the other thing, Fergal, where we need to relax is planning for farmers in rural areas, where they can go to the planning department and get planning for a one-off house. That's a major problem for young farmers at the moment. And our priority is we would set up a commission on the future of the Irish family farm, deliver an enhanced suckler payment for beef farmers, €350 per cow, deliver enhanced sheep improvement schemes and sheep welfare payment, increased investment in tillage incentive schemes and horticultural industry, and seeking a fairer cap for family farms and reversal of cuts to cap funding, and ensure European Union free trade agreements protect and support Irish
Johnny
farmers.
Gark, Sinn Féin. There was two people. I'm only going to two because you had your hands up first. Ronan Moore, Social Democrats.
Yeah, two things. You mentioned cull, which is a very emotive word. We don't believe that you would ever kill a live, healthy animal. There's no reason to. But there is a need to reduce the national herd in terms of breeding practices. And in terms of the derogation, 500 waterways that were pristine are now down to 13. If it can be proven, and the science is there, that actually will change. That's something else to go to. But at the moment, we'll be an outlier and the only country with the derogation, and that's not going to be able to survive.
Peadar, briefly.
Accountability into this, but it's really frustrating to hear political parties speaking from both sides of their mouth. It's important to say Fine Gael voted for McCurser in the Dáil, and Fianna Fáil voted for and against McCurser in the European Parliament. And a lot of the regulation is coming from the Green Party. The Green Party looks at farmers nearly as caretakers of the land. Absolutely, farmers are, but they also have to focus on productivity. We need to make sure that farmers remain productive and can make a living out of it.
I do want to give the final word to Fergal Hennessy on this. Fergal, you have listened. Do you get the sense they have a clear understanding of what the farming community is facing, and are they prepared to do what is required to meet those needs?
Yeah, there was some points there were quite interesting, but I am very concerned about three of the parties saying that they are in favour of removing the derogation and reducing the herd of the size of the national herd. If we lose the derogation, that is worth €20 billion a year to the Irish economy. And it's not just 20 billion, it's the top 20 billion. If you take the derogation off a productive dairy farmer, that's the top 20% that he has. That is the 20% of money, of cash in his pocket that he has to spend in the local community and support local clubs and local businesses. Ronan, you mentioned a 1.5 billion fund to mitigate against that, or against 20 billion a year. It's not, it won't go anywhere near it. We've heard a lot about environmental sustainability. We can't be environmentally sustainable if we're not financially sustainable. So the first point is we are not gardeners. We do protect our land. At our core, most farmers believe that they don't have the right to sell their land. Their job is, as caretakers, to take the land from one generation to the next. We are the only industry that has that idea about our business. We will protect our land. We will do what we need to be environmentally friendly, but we need to be financially sustainable as well. If it's not economically viable, all the rest of it will not happen.
We'll leave it there. That was Fergal Hennessy, the Deputy Chair of the National Foreign Business Committee with the IFA. Thank you for that. We'll take a break and move on. We're heading into the final stages of our final debate of election 2024. And just to let you know, between now and election day, polling day, which is happening on Friday, we'll be keeping you abreast of everything that is happening in terms of political relevance in the constituency as we head towards polling on Friday. Let's press on with the questions. We go to Peter Glynn of SIP2 next. Peter.
Thanks, Alan. The question to the panel is, with a society that claims full employment, albeit some workers in in some employments are actually discouraged and penalised, including up to dismissal, for seeking or accessing their employment rights. We're asking the panel to give a pledge here today to commit to transpose and implement in full the provisions of the adequate minimum wage that promotes collective bargaining, protects employee representatives in the workplace, and allows trade union access within the workplace. On another note then, in relation to Section 39s, having been involved in that dispute with employers, I have to put on record here that the dispute is not finalised. We're still waiting for the funder to attend the WRC to finalise the terms and conditions of employment of those workers who do valuable work within the society. Thanks, Alan.
Okay, thank you for that. Peter Glynn of SIP2. Two particular areas there. We brought up Section 39 workers. That predominantly came up in relation to the carers discussion we had, and that dispute is ongoing, albeit that the government did intervene to a certain extent and put different proposals on the table. We'll perhaps get into that at a later point. But more importantly, Johnny Glynn, or Johnny Girk, I'm going to start with you on this from Sinn Féin. Workers' rights. Despite the progress that we have made when it comes to representation of workers, there are still pockets, and we see them time and again, where it seems that workers' rights are being trod on by many companies.
Yeah, I met John Regan from SIP2 the other day, and I signed a collective bargaining agreement with him, and I know exactly how important unions are in the workplace. I stood with the Tara Mines workers. I stood with the firefighters outside the fire stations when they got commitments from Darragh O'Brien to honour agreements he made and still haven't been honoured, where they're talking about going back on industrial action. So they're making these commitments, they need to be honoured, and I will definitely 100% support the collective bargaining agreement. And
Okay, Seamus McManaman of the Green Party.
Yeah, so we think the living wage, which I think what you were mentioning there, is vital to this for workers to ensure dignity. We're also proposing a citizen assembly to look at the feasibility of introducing a 4-day week to improve the quality of life for workers, as works in other countries, and reforming the remote working tax relief into a simple to access tax credit. So yeah, as someone who can't strike, I see the value of unions, and I certainly think we should be supporting workers wherever we can.
Okay, Finbar Lynch, People Before Profit, Solidarity. You were talking about the 4-day week as well, weren't you?
We were, yes. We endorsed that without any loss of pay as well. We also endorsed, yes, a living wage of €15. I think it's a fundamental human right to be able to have enough income to be able to not only have a roof over your head, but to be able to raise a family on that, which feels so unattainable to so many people my age. As well as you mentioned, like collective bargaining, we want to legislate for mandatory union recognition in all workplaces. We also want to reform the Industrial Relations Act so it's possible to hold strikes like the Dunn Stores workers in the 80s, where they supported the South African people suffering under apartheid, as well as political and sympathy strikes. And I'm a member of Forza myself, so I absolutely support Section 39 workers and in their endeavours to get pay parity, and we want to stress the underrepresentation of care work in general and the exploitation of it.
Okay, thank you for that. Finbar Lynch. To Aisling Dempsey of Fianna Fáil.
Thanks for your question, Peter. Thanks for being here this morning. And yes, look, I suppose the simple answer is I support workers' rights. I think dignity and respect in the workplace and the ability to unionise and to fight for your rights and to have pay parity and all of those things are hugely important. To clarify, I suppose, the point on the Section 39 workers, Fianna Fáil are committed to resolving that matter, and look, I fully support you.
Okay, Aisling Dempsey of Fianna Fáil. To Paddy Tobin of Ain 2.
Yeah, I've been a long-term supporter of the Meads Trades Council, and I suppose nationally, politically, probably nobody's raised the plight of the Tara Mines workers more than myself. You'll probably notice, and right through all the debates I've said, pay terms and conditions. That has been, it's a common element in the delivery of all the services in this country. We support a constitutional right to collective bargaining. Collective bargaining is the balance of rights between employers and employees. And also, it's really frustrating to me around Section 39, because the government continues to saying we can't find the staff to do X, Y. But if they paid the staff to do X, Y properly, they would find the staff. And, there's been a big crisis this year of the number of children in state care, for example, and those children being put into locations that are not properly regulated or vetted. But I'm talking to the voluntary sectors who work in there. They're Section 39 workers. They can't get decent pay or guarantees of proper pensions in the future, and that's why capacity can't be created. So you can't say on one level we don't have enough services if you're not going to pay staff enough, and that's a key element for us.
Okay, Paddy being a vein to Linda Nelson Murray of Fine Gael.
Thank you. You started off by saying that you wanted us to pledge on the full minimum wage and on Section 39. So from my point of view, I'm at the face of all this. I'm a business owner. So I think it needs to be a two-pronged approach. So we need to look after our workers, which we do, we have 25 of them employed, and we also need to look after businesses. So it's about supporting both to make sure that both survive, because I definitely hear the businesses are finding the increased cost of business very, very difficult at the moment. I have a small business based in Navan, and I'm delighted to see that our workers will get more money, but I'd also like to see more support for them, more mental support, anything that we can do to make the workplace a better place for them, while also supporting businesses, because there's so much involved. So I think what happened this year was there was all things thrown at businesses at the same time, between sick pay, between minimum wage, auto-enrolment, everything was happening at one time. And I'm glad to see that we have kind of, I suppose, supported businesses by giving grants and by also pausing a couple of the things. But yes, I would be in favour of minimum wage going up and looking after our workers,
Okay,
absolutely, while also looking after businesses.
Thank you. Ronan Moore of the Social Democrats.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Look, I'm a proud member of the union. I took my turn as a shop steward as well. Social Democrats, look, we understand the proud history of the trade unions and basically a key role in playing in our country in promoting workers' rights. We don't think it's overly complicated in terms of giving stronger workers' rights legislation and providing high-quality public services. In our manifesto, in the right to collective bargaining, the very first thing that we mention is exactly what you've asked, the transposing and implementing the full provisions of the Adequate Minimum Wages Directive, and as well as the provisions of the Platform Work Directive to promote collective bargaining. We have a whole host of measures, including instructory of statutory right recognition for workplaces where 15% of the unions vote for union representation. And we also have a raft of measures as well to look at combating low pay and precarious employment, such as creating a regular review of the new living wage benchmark. We need our workers, we need to protect them. I think and unions are part and parcel of that. Thank you.
Okay, Ronan, let's go to Noel French, non-party.
Yeah, a long-time member of trade unions and groups that collectively represent me. So, absolutely, and trade unions have been a hugely positive impact on our society. Totally agree with everything you say. Collective bargaining. The thing that gets me about Section 39 is how government and other bodies employ people on contracts that perhaps they should be employing directly. Because it is the government's responsibility to provide some of these services. And while equal pay to Section 39 workers, I totally agree with, but they don't have the same opportunities of promotion and advancement and training that employees of government bodies do. So, thank you.
Okay, Noel French, non-party. I want to read this to you. It's a pledge. I'm not asking you to sign it. I'm asking, would you sign up to this? And it says, I pledge to support legislation which promotes collective bargaining, protects workplace representatives, and ensures the right to access a trade union at work. Anyone here who wouldn't sign up to that? No? Okay, all on board on that. So, Peter, you listened to that. I want to, first of all, perhaps put it to you, do you get the sense that the unions don't have the sort of power that they had when we were a lot younger?
We get the sense that it's challenging time for us as trade unions, and the community aspect that we had years ago is not instilled nowadays, but we're working on to improve that.
And what about when we look at some of the disputes? We won't go into them necessarily in terms of naming them, but they've been well publicised, where it has been a difficult road for workers to get their rights recognised and to, I suppose, come to what was considered by most to be an equitable settlement in relation to matters that they were looking for. They constantly have to fight to bring it right to the wire.
We constantly have to fight and bring it to full process before we can actually engage in strikes. Tara Mines would be a clear example of that. The CE workers, a clear example of that, where people had to give up a day's pay to go out in a picket line to get what's actually their fundamental rights.
Listening to our gathered politicians here, outgoing and first-timers, are you happy in their understanding and the stance they're adopting in relation to workers' rights?
We believe the moment the government is weak in promoting the rights of workers. The high-level group, which was set up pre the European Commission's Advocate Directive, gave a report in 2022 which stipulated collective bargaining in the workplace, and we are still waiting for that. It's sitting on the shelf in the department. I mean, it's just absolutely appalling to think you set up a high-level group, you get the report and just sit on it.
Does anybody want to respond to that? Nobody? Yeah, Ronan Moore of Social Democrats?
I mean, like I guess it's a kind of a constant factor where we have these reports done, we have these agreements made, and as you say, they sit on the shelf and gather dust. And I think for ourselves as Social Democrats, it's recognising just how important our workers and our unions are. I mean, like they have been, the foundation helps the foundation of the state. They have protected workers' rights and they have increased work wages across the board. So for ourselves, like again, we've pages of measures that we want to deliver. I think that would answer those concerns.
And time and again, you know, a government will not directly get involved in a dispute, and quite rightly so. But do you get the sense that there's almost a feeling that it's about big business and not about the workers?
We do indeed, yes.
Simple and straightforward. Johnny?
In a dispute with the firefighters, and they didn't honour it. You know, so I mean, these people are doing very, very valuable work, and we cannot manage without them. And I stood in the picket line with these firefighters in good faith. They signed up to agreements that haven't been honoured by Minister Darragh O'Brien, and that is not good enough. These people have voted again to go in industrial action. You know, a vital service that's very, very badly needed.
Okay, I'll leave the final word to you, Peter Glynn of SIP2.
Just on a final note, just to let you know how hard it is for workers out there to get organised. We had a publicly funded body who wouldn't recognise the trade union, fully funded public body who advocates for the vulnerable people in Ireland, and they would not recognise the trade union until we ended up in the Labour Court and industrial action. And that's a publicly funded body. How hard is it for the private sector?
Number of state contracts that actually go out to private companies who then refuse to recognise unions, which is incredible. It should be built into tenders that if you're going to actually get a state contract, you need to be able to recognise unions and negotiate with them in terms of paying conditions.
Okay, we leave it there. We press on. Thank you for that. That was Peter Glynn of SIP2. We take a break there. Welcome back to us. Let's get to some other questions which have been submitted for this, our final debate in election 2024. This is regarding Navan Emergency Department. It is official HSE policy that Navan Emergency Department is closed. Will you commit here and now to reversing this policy and investing in Navan ED to secure it? Johnny Girk, first to you.
Alan, we have a long track record going back to the time of Joe Riley in the 80s of standing up and picketing outside Navan Hospital when needed be. The government closed Ennis and Nina and St John's in Tipperary and Clare, and the pressure that put on University Hospital Limerick has crippled Limerick Hospital. 2 months ago, Sinn Féin put a motion to the Dáil to reopen emergency services in the Midwest, supported by all parties. So they realised, Alan, that they made the mistake then and that they have to reverse this. So Navan Hospital needs to be protected, enhanced, and if there is issues in Navan Hospital, it needs to be put the same funding into it that they're going to have to put into these Section Model 3 hospitals in the Midwest. So 100% we need to support and enhance services in Navan Hospital.
Thank you for that. Let's go to Noel French now of a non-party.
Navan is not able to cope with the existing a number of people. Our Lady of Lourdes in Drogheda is not able to cope with the existing number of people. So absolutely, we need to support our emergency departments. Meath has a population of over 200,000. We need an emergency department. I fully support it.
Seamus McMenamin of the Green Party.
Yeah, so Meath has the lowest number of GPs per head of population in the whole country. So if the emergency department goes, there isn't the structures there to cope. We know that Drogheda can't cope with the expected overflow from people who would have gone to Navan. But one of the problems is that they're not investing in what's there at the moment. So we do need to look at investing in the services that are currently there, as well as avoiding it being downgraded in the future. And in terms of the other issues, the community hubs, which in theory were promised as a way of compensating, there isn't going to be any Meath-based consultant. So there isn't going to be a Meath-based cardiologist in the community hub, a respiratory consultant, and that's something that needs to change as well.
Okay, thank you for that. To Ronan Moore of the Social Democrats.
Look, our own, I guess, past party leader, Roisin Shortall, she left the Labour Party at the time on a point of principle when political interference and a postcode lottery, and we see this situation continue to exist where, as Seamus mentions, like Meath has the worst GP coverage across the country. When it comes to Navan Hospital, like our health strategy is very clear. It has to be based on fair allocation of resources across the regions based on objective health need, and the postcode lottery needs to end. This must ensure that you have specialist services, particularly cardiovascular and cancer treatments. And when you look at the distance, I guess the population of Meath and how it's grown, of Navan, in terms of its location, in terms of on the outskirts of town, and its access points to across the county, for ourselves, we would believe that I would argue that Navan Hospital needs to become a level 3 hospital with auxiliary resources to support that need.
Okay, Ronan Moore, thank you for that. Finbar Lynch of People Before Profit Solidarity.
This government to strip down and sell off public services to the highest bidder. The centralisation of A&E structures has been justified on the basis of safety and efficiency. The safety based on international evidence, which is largely based off conditions like stroke or major trauma, which would already be bypassed to larger facilities. Also in terms of saying that it's more cost efficient, it doesn't factor in pre-hospital care or the bureaucracy involved in the centralisation of these services. People who fall sick or get injured in Navan, especially the elderly, have a right to receive care close to home. But aside from that, we need to talk about the capacity crisis in our health service, the two-tier health service because of cutbacks from successive Fianna Fáil Fine Gael governments. The decrease of acute beds has been paralleled with the increasing role of private healthcare and people like Dennis O'Brien and Larry Goodman cashing in our health service.
Finbar Lynch, thank you for that. To Linda Nelson-Murray, Fine Gael.
I am committed to Navan Hospital. I'm committed to what is best to people's health. I'm committed to retaining all the services in Navan Hospital, like our x-rays, our bloods, our MRIs, our CCU, our rheumatology, endoscopies, colonoscopies, everything. My family and I have used Navan Hospital over the years. It saved my dad's life many years ago when he went into VT. It saved my life 2 years ago. We need to keep investing in Navan Hospital, and we also need to keep investing in primary care, and I'm glad to see that there's new primary care places opening soon. But I'm also committed to listening to the doctors and the management as to what is best. So I'm fully committed to Navan Hospital.
Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil.
And yeah, I'm also absolutely 100% committed to Navan Hospital, to the continued investment in it. It's Fianna Fáil and government under Minister Stephen Donnelly and the Fianna Fáil local representatives here that saved Navan Hospital, and we fought the HSE on the closure of it. Hearing the stories all the time, if I didn't get to Navan Hospital, I was a goner, I had a heart attack. We're hearing this all the time. It's so important to Navan, to Meath and beyond. We have record investment in Navan Hospital. We have 240 more staff than we did in 2019, 31 extra beds. Our wait times are coming down with 14 million investment in the hospital up since 2019 as well. New MRI unit.
Okay.
Navan Hospital is staying open.
Aisling Dempsey, thank you for that. Paddy Tobin, finally, of Ain2.
Yeah, so Navan Hospital is the most important piece of health infrastructure that we have in the county. And there are thousands of people alive today in Meath as a result of Navan Hospital. I said earlier that Fianna Fáil and the Greens created a shortlist, a hit list of hospital A&Es for closure. There were 10 of them. Only 2 still are open, and that's down to the people power that has happened because of the Save Navan Hospital campaign. It's probably the act that I'm most proud of as my time as an elected representative, to chair the Save Navan Hospital campaign. 5 times, even as recent as 2021, the government have looked to close Navan A&E. Imagine going through COVID if Navan A&E was closed. It would have been an absolute disaster. Now, what really frustrates me is that question focuses in on a really important sentence. In the Small Hospital Framework document, it is the official policy of the HSE to close Navan A&E. That only exists because of the imprimatur of the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Green government. So we need more than platitudes. We need to delete that line and actually make sure that there's an investment in Navan A into the future.
Okay, Paddy Tobin, thank you for that. I want to just perhaps flesh out a little bit more in relation to the possibility of it going. And I presume fundamentally you wouldn't have an issue with it if we had a structure in place, or structures that were touched on by Seamus there in relation to equipment, consultants, etc. But it's not happening, and there's no broader thinking about it. It's great on paper, Seamus, but I mean, if we were to do that, close the emergency department, what do you feel the implications would be?
Well, this is something I have to deal with every day. In my day job as a GP, I have to make those decisions with patients. Where are you going to go? And is it going to be Navan, or are you going to be travelling to Drogheda or the Mater or somewhere else? And part of the issue is stauncher care, which Ronan mentioned. There is a plan there which in theory should reduce the need for people to get to that crisis point where the emergency department is the only option. But we have a lot of issues in our health system where there is no alternative, because the emergency department consultants would say we're getting everything, but there's no plan for people to just arrive in. But they're doing that for a good reason, because there's no alternative. And unless you provide the alternatives, and we're told very clearly, our colleagues in Drogheda Hospital are saying, we cannot take Navan patients.
Okay.
So they need to listen to that.
Very briefly.
GPs in Meath, incredibly low, the lowest number of GPs per capita in the whole country. The government promised a centre of excellence in Drogheda, but we have a centre of trolleys in relation to that. And look what happened to Limerick University Hospital. The government closed Ennis, they closed Nina, and Aoife Johnston, a 16-year-old girl, had to wait for 15 hours just for an antibiotic because of sepsis, didn't get it, and as a result lost her lives. And the conditions still remain there as a result of the government's policies.
When Jerry McEntee, Clinical Director and the Director of Nursing were in with ourselves, Meath County Council, asked the question whether Navan Hospital could and should be upgraded to a level 3. The Director of Nursing was very clear then by saying that, look, that's really an answer in terms of the population figures. And when you look at the population figures and look at the fact that when we have staunch care that's based on need, not the ability to pay, and not a postcode lottery, I believe that it is a case that you would have the rationale to defend it.
Okay, Ronan Moore, thank you for that. I'll get back to you if we can, Johnny, but I've got to take a break there. Welcome back. We're heading into, as they say, the final furlongs of this last debate of election 2024 in the few minutes that we have left. I suppose I just want to get a sense of what it's been like on the doorstep and the narrative that has been out there. Have we seen a shift in terms of what people are thinking or the manner in which they may vote? Because we hear over and over again, we're back to default, FF, FG with maybe somebody else. Johnny, what are they saying to you on the doorstep, and has that fundamentally changed in terms of the message you're getting over the course of the campaign?
Well, we've been out a good while, Alan, and the issues that are coming up, like as housing, healthcare, the cost of living, constantly coming.
As we'd expect, but you haven't seen a shift in that, have you? It's been more or less consistent.
The cost of living has come up a lot in the last couple of weeks. It's a massive issue for a lot of families right across Meath West. There's issues like with housing where young people are staying with their parents and don't ever feel like they'll ever own a home. You know, so I've told them.
And sons and daughters on farms that can't get planning permission to build on land that's already there.
Those are the issues.
Noel, what about your own experience?
Housing cost of living, hard to get people at home.
Maybe they're just not answering the door to you.
Maybe they're not, but certainly I would have found in previous elections that more people were coming to the door, more people were engaging. Are they keeping quiet, and are we going to get a surprise on Friday? I don't know, but certainly the election campaigns have changed since 2020. I found that in the local elections. I found that now. Yes, those video cameras at the front door, and yes, people inside closing the blinds as you're there knocking.
I just want to ask you this question then, Seamus. You get a sense that there's a sense of apathy amongst the electorate. I certainly don't get the sense of anger on this campaign that one would have expected. Given the cost of living crisis, given housing, it doesn't seem to be manifesting itself.
What we're finding is that some of the one-off cost of living measures, people sort of acknowledge those and are kind of grateful, but they need to really get at the systemic things that need to be changed, like the living wage, to really improve people's day-to-day lives. What I'm finding is, as Noel mentioned, a lot of people are commuters. They're not in the house till late. There's a lot of stress. So, you know, it's kind of an extension of my day job. Sometimes you get very stressed people talking to you at the doorsteps, very under a lot of pressure, trying to juggle all the plates and keep things going. And then one of the other things I think which is surprising is, given what's happened in Valencia, we get a lot of people who are realising that climate change in Ireland is going to be flooding, it's going to be saturated land. I've had farmers come up to be worried about fodder as a result of that, and they can see that there's issues that we really need to change now, because it's only going to get worse unless we do act now.
Okay, let me ask you, Linda Nelson, Maria Fine Gael, in terms of campaigning, and I mean, it's shifted fundamentally in terms of the way we've seen elections being run since I was a young fella to now. It's all about social media. It's all about what's out there in the atmosphere. How have you been coping with that, or do you see it as an advantage?
I suppose, first of all, I'm out for the last 2.5 years knocking on doors, thanks to everyone who has engaged, and people are 99.9% very kind. And when other people say to me, oh my God, Linda, how are you doing this? How are you actually knocking on someone's door? Like, what are they saying to you? And what you see on social media, Alan, is not what you get at the doors. 100%. You get...
so where's the truth then? What you're getting on the door, what you're getting on social media?
Well, I think people can be, you know, a bit keyboard warrior and they're, you know, maybe at night time compared to what you see at a door. But I find people are very engaging. And in terms of the issues, I don't know if you guys are the same, but the speed of traffic on our roads is a massive issue. People want traffic calming. Childcare is a massive issue. Housing is another one. And what else?
But do you get this sense of anger at the door?
No, no, I don't. No. But I haven't done nothing wrong, Alan.
I know, but I mean, just in general, not anger with you, but anger in terms of policy.
No, I know what you mean.
And government.
Yeah, no.
Heather, I will come to you. Finbar.
We've had the issues with housing and healthcare, Navan rail line for many years, and I think there is a lot of anger about these things in society. I think also that this anger has been directed at migrants and refugees by the far right over the last couple of years, with a lot of help from the political establishment and certain parties at this table. I think that there is a lot of...
What do you mean specifically by that, with the help of parties at this table?
Into and their immigration manifesto. So apart from that, yes, we want to Basically, yes, we want to raise people's expectations and to direct anger where it's warranted.
Okay, I'll have to let you respond to that, Padder.
It's absolute nonsense. We in AIM2 absolutely believe that we need a system to differentiate between those who need help and those who don't. And all we're simply asking for is that the law is fully implemented. And unfortunately, we do have people on the far left, unfortunately, who do seek to censor and to shut people up in relation to this. But you know what? We live in a liberal democracy, and people have a right to respectfully discuss these particular issues and find solutions for them. And we're proud of the fact that what we've sought to do is simply make sure that the government are implementing the law as it stands, and we know they're not doing that. And just on the issue of the cost of living, and this is key, because the cost of living does hurt more in Meath, I believe, than it hurts elsewhere. We found out that the government collected 3.8 billion in fuel taxes last year. In Meath, that's especially important because many people don't have an alternative route to work. We're crying out for a rail line for the last 15, 20 years. It's being refused from us. And if the government are increasing taxes on fuel to get us to use alternative public transport, they're failing in Meath.
I do have to let you back in just briefly, Finbar. Do you want to respond to any?
We need to direct anger at housing developers, etc. Yeah.
Aisling,
Yeah,
in terms of your own experience, has it been a baptism of fire for you?
Not quite. I've been doing it a few years now, but look at it. I've seen a very mixed bag on the doors. People who are engaging with me are engaging on housing, on education, and on disability. But I think for the most part, people know we are making progress, that it's all about progress, and we have brought a huge amount of stability to the country and to Meath West.
I want to bring Rona in there before we come to the closing.
That question, you might have just popped over me, but we're finding two things. One is, I guess, for ourselves as a party, people are more familiar with the Social Democrats. Holly, obviously, about to give birth soon, but the idea is of
Has baby not come yet?
Not yet, no. Not yet. But look, the idea of childcare, healthcare, housing, these are still issues that people really are dealing with. And I think the second thing I've found is that we met a lot of people who are traditional Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael supporters who are kind of reticent of the idea of a Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael majority, which the polls would have suggested a few weeks back. And I think there's a real space and desire for somebody else, whichever those two or three big parties there, to have a smaller party with an outside influence, which I think is really starting to come up for ourselves.
I want to put Padder on the spot here. Padder, how many seats are you going to take?
Well, we're going to be competitive in about 10
we know that. How many
constituencies.
seats are you going to take?
It could be any number between 1 and 10. I mean, that's the truth. On a good day, we could be in the upper reaches of that.
Okay,
but there's no doubt
there's a break, or no? What we're going to do is we're going to allow you about 30 seconds or thereabouts just to do a wrap. So, Johnny, in the 30 seconds that we have left, lay out your stall.
It's time to change the government. The choice you have in this election is clear. Sinn Féin are the only alternative to Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. The same parties that have been governing for the past 100 years have wasted so much of the public's money and broken promise after promise. Look at their failures, particularly in relation to housing. We cannot afford another 5 years of the same parties in government. It's time to give Sinn Féin a chance. We have the team, we have the plans. I vote Johnny Gurk number one.
Your time is up, Johnny. Johnny Gurk, Sinn Féin. No French, non-party.
I want action. I want things to improve. I can be the person who gets those improvements done. Vote French first Friday.
Ronan Moore, Social Democrats.
The next election is about choices. Do you believe Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and large parties that they can erode our tax base, one-off measures, and still invest in services that are important to us, housing, healthcare, childcare? Social Democrats, we won 6 seats nationwide the last time around. A lot of commentators believe we can double it. I think there's a real chance in Meath West. I came 5th last time around. But it really is just by people trusting us with our vote, voting Ronan Moore, number 1, Social Democrats. Thank you.
Linda Nelson Murray of Fine Gael.
I'm from a background of a mum and dad who left school at 12 and 13 and had to work. I started working myself at 13 and I have not stopped. I was a campaigner for jobs and business and I got a lot done. I moved into politics 5 years ago because I actually really do care. I'm now a county councillor and I want to be your newest TD. I'm full of energy, I have a lifetime of experience to bring to this role and I want you to vote Linda Nelson Murray, number 1. Thank you.
Seamus McMenamin, Green Party.
So the best predictor of what someone's going to do is you look at what they've done in the past. So every day my patients trust my judgment on very serious matters of their health. And I have seen, in government we have reduced childcare costs. We want to do that even more so no one will pay more than €200 a month for childcare. We've also cut the costs of public transport by 50% for everyone under 26 and 20% for everyone else. We want to continue doing these things, and if you vote for me on Friday, we will.
Okay, Finbar Lynch, People Before Profit, Solidarity.
A Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael candidate for Meath West can tell you that they're going to invest in Navan Rail Line or Navan Hospital, but then they go into the Dáil, they'll be subject to the party whip, and the parties won't stand for that. They don't invest in public services. They want to strip them down, sell them off to the highest bidder. If you want a left government that'll radically transform the society, your best chance is to vote for People for Profit number 1, the only party to rule out coalition with Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael. Vote People for Profit number 1 and transfer left to end 100 years of Fianna Fáil Fine Gael rule.
Lynch, thank you for that. Paddy Tobin of Ain 2.
Yeah, we need to cut through the platitudes and words in this election and look at the records of individuals who are standing for election. And I'm proud of the record in terms of the hospital, in terms of the rail line, and in terms of the numbers of Gardaí in this country. I'm also proud of the record that I've actually held the government to account nationally, probably more than any other TD as well. As a result, I know that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are targeting my seat, so I will say it is really important that people give us the first preference in the election on Friday.
Aisling Dempsey, Fianna Fáil.
Thank you. Respectfully seeking your number 1 vote or highest preference. Hopefully I'll get a few transfers from Patter's top in the poll. I'm a community-focused person. I'm solution-based. I want to bring a fresh voice to the Dáil and a new perspective on behalf of families everywhere across Meath West. I'm focused on improving the lives of the families and the most vulnerable in our society. Thank you.
And that's where we leave it. Thank you for joining us this morning for our final debate of election 2024, to our panel of guests and the guests who joined us here in Trim for that debate. I want to thank the team for putting so much hard work into it, to ensuring that we got these debates out to our listeners on LMFM, and we can assure you we'll be bringing a breakdown of what is happening over the next couple of days and right throughout the course of the count over the weekend. But for now, from everyone here, good morning.
Election 2024.